There are infinite hells across infinite worlds. But Dante Alighieri had only documented 9 circles of one. He thought he understood damnation. He thought his divine comedy had mapped the geography of suffering itself. Then he woke up in the 41st millennium and realized his Inferno was a mercy compared to the reality humanity had inherited. The last thing the poet remembered was Florence, 1321, the fever burning through his body like purgatorial fire, his final breath rattling in his chest as he reached for words that would not come. Then nothing. Then everything. Then this. Awakening on cold metal flooring that thrummed with distant machinery in a corridor lit by stuttering lumen strips that cast shadows wrong, as if the darkness itself had learned to move independently of light. Dante pushed himself upright, his poet's hands, soft from quill work, unmarked by labor, pressing against grated steel. The air tasted of recycled oxygen, machine oil, and something else. Something that made his sinuses burn and his eyes water. Incense, perhaps, but corrupt. Sacred smoke turned profane. Before you journey further into this nightmare, know this. If you crave more tales from the dark millennium, pledge your loyalty and hit that subscribe button. Because in the 41st millennium, even the Emperor needs faithful witnesses to his Imperium's endless war. Only together can we face what lies ahead. The corridor stretched in both directions, bulkheads marked with high Gothic script that hurt to read, not because the language was unfamiliar, though it was, but because something in the angular lettering seemed designed to wound the soul. Skulls adorned every junction, every archway, every reinforcement beam. Human skulls, hundreds of them, thousands, set in walls like devotional offerings, their empty sockets watching, judging, accusing. Dante had written of rivers of blood and forests of suicides. He had crafted verses about the wrathful tearing at each other in putrid swamps. But he had never imagined this. The casual, industrial deployment of death as decoration. This wasn't punishment for sin. This was architecture. A sound echoed down the corridor. Boots on metal, heavy and rhythmic. Military boots, many of them moving in formation. Dante pressed himself against the wall, his heart hammering against ribs that felt too fragile for this reality. In Florence, he had been a politician, a diplomat, a man of letters. He had never held a sword except ceremonially, never struck another man in anger. The boots grew closer. Voices accompanied them now, speaking in that same angular language, but rougher, laden with authority and casual violence. Around the corner came soldiers, but not like any soldiers Dante had ever seen. They wore armor the color of dried blood, chest plates emblazoned with eagles that shrieked silently in gold leaf. Their faces were hidden behind rebreather masks that gave them the aspect of plague doctors, but militarized, transformed into instruments of sanctioned death. Each carried a rifle of some kind, though the design was wrong, too bulky, with glowing charge packs and bayonets longer than Dante's forearm. The lead soldier stopped, turned, the rebreather mask tilted toward where Dante stood frozen against the wall, every muscle locked in prey animal terror. "Contact," the soldier said, raising his weapon. "Unidentifiziert." Dante raised his hands, the universal gesture of surrender, unchanged across 700 years. "Please," he said in his native Tuscan, "per favore, I don't know where." The rifle's barrel never wavered. The soldier barked something into a vox bead at his collar, the harsh syllables crackling with static. More boots, more soldiers. Dante found himself surrounded by a kill squad whose weapons never trembled, whose discipline never faltered, whose willingness to execute an unarmed man seemed not just probable, but inevitable. One soldier stepped forward, different from the others. An officer, perhaps, distinguished by the purity seal hanging from his shoulder guard, parchment and wax inscribed with more of that reality-bending script. When he spoke, His voice was processed through the rebreather. Mechanized, inhuman. Identificazione, settore, clearance codex. Dante understood none of it. He shook his head, hands still raised, and tried Latin, the church Latin of his era, hoping some connection might exist between his past and this incomprehensible present. Non comprehendo, sum Dante Alighieri, poeta Florentiae. The officer's hand moved to his sidearm, a brutal, heavy pistol that looked capable of removing limbs with a single shot. Dante closed his eyes and thought of Beatrice, of the Paradiso he had written, the celestial rose, the divine light that he had tried so desperately to capture in inadequate words. He had imagined judgment. He had imagined salvation. He had never imagined this. Dying nameless on a metal floor, executed by angels armored in blood-red ceramite, in a hell that made his 9 circles look like practice sketches for the true horror of human eternity. The pistol's hammer clicked back. Then a new voice cut through the corridor, speaking in accented but comprehensible Tuscan. "Wait, lower your weapons. That dialect. Emperor preserve us, that's ancient tyrannic." The soldiers didn't lower their weapons, but they didn't fire either. From behind the formation emerged a figure that seemed impossibly fragile compared to the armored giants surrounding him. A man in brown robes that might have been mistaken for a monk's habit, if not for the data slate clutched in his hands and the brass cogitator hanging from his belt like a mechanical rosary. He was ancient, his face a topography of wrinkles, his hands liver-spotted and trembling with either age or excitement. Wire-rimmed spectacles perched on a nose that had been broken and poorly set at some point in his long life. But his eyes burned with the intensity of a scholar who had just stumbled upon a manuscript thought lost forever. "Ancient tyrannic," he repeated, this time in Gothic, his voice quavering. "Officer Brennus, this man speaks a dialect dead for 10,000 years. He cannot be a security threat. He's an archaeological impossibility." The officer, Brennus, didn't holster his pistol. "Administratum scribe Hadrian, with respect, impossibilities are how chaos infiltrates. This could be a shapeshifter, a demon wearing human skin." Dante's blood turned to ice water at the word demon. In his comedy, demons had been allegorical, symbolic, creatures of moral lesson rather than literal threat. The way these soldiers reacted suggested something very different. Hadrian shuffled forward, data slate raised like a holy icon. "Then let me verify. Ancient protocols exist for exactly this scenario." He stopped 3 paces from Dante, close enough that the poet could smell the old man's breath, recycled air, stim calf, and the dusty scent of ancient parchment. "You, state your full name, place of origin, and last clear memory." Dante swallowed, his throat clicking dryly. "Dante Alighieri, born in Florence, year of our Lord 1265. I was dying. The fever. I remember my daughter's face. And then," he gestured helplessly at the corridor, the skulls, the soldiers. "Then this." Hadrian's fingers danced across the data slate, calling up information that made the screen glow with amber script. His lips moved as he read, citing passages from memory that sounded like scripture. Florence, Italian peninsula, pre-Unity terror. The poet Dante, author of the Divine Comedy, one of the foundational texts of old tyrannic literature, died in Ravenna in 1321 by the Julian calendar. He looked up, spectacles catching the lumen light. "That's over 11,000 years ago." "Impossible," Brennus growled. "Improbable," Hadrian corrected. "There's a difference. Warp translation errors, temporal displacement. The bureaucracy has documented 17,000 cases of chronological anomaly, though never one quite so." He trailed off, studying Dante with the intensity of a natural historian examining a newly discovered species. "You really are him, aren't you? The actual Dante Alighieri?" Dante wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Instead, only one emerged. "Where am I?" The old scribe's expression shifted from excitement to something that might have been pity. Aboard the administratum vessel Unending Ledger, in transit through the segmentum obscurus, in the year of our emperor's reign. He paused, calculating. "By your reckoning, approximately the year 12,521. The number hit Dante like a physical blow. 11,000 years, 11 millennia. Everyone he had known, Beatrice, his children, his rivals, his patrons, even the stones of Florence itself, reduced to dust so ancient that dust itself seemed too generous a description. "The emperor?" Dante managed. "You speak of an emperor as if he is God?" Hadrian's voice carried a warning edge now, the excitement cooling into something more dangerous. "Because he is. The God Emperor of mankind, master of the Imperium, he who sits upon the golden throne. All humanity exists within his divine light, and to question his divinity is heresy of the highest order." Dante had written 3 books about the Christian God. He had mapped the afterlife according to Catholic doctrine. He had spent decades contemplating the nature of divine justice. And now this old man was telling him that everything had been replaced by an emperor god he had never heard of. "I don't understand," Dante whispered. Hadrian's expression softened slightly. "No, you wouldn't. How could you?" He turned to Brennus. "Officer, I invoke Administratum Protocol 777 Alpha. This individual represents a historical artifact of incalculable value. He must be transported to the archival decks under protective custody, not hostile detention." Brennus was silent for a long moment, the rebreather making his breathing sound like a mechanical heartbeat. Finally, "He remains restrained. Any sign of corruption, any indication of warp taint, and I execute him myself. Understood, scribe?" "Perfectly, officer." 2 soldiers moved forward, producing restraints, not rope or chain, but some kind of plasteel binding that clicked shut around Dante's wrists with magnetic finality. The poet didn't resist. What would be the point? These men could kill him as easily as crushing an insect, perhaps more easily. As they led him down the corridor, past more skull-adorned bulkheads and through passages that thrummed with the heartbeat of massive engines, Dante found himself thinking about Virgil. In his comedy, the Roman poet had guided him through hell and purgatory, had explained the rules of damnation and redemption, had been mentor and protector both. Here, in this real hell that made his fictional one look quaint, there would be no Virgil. There would be only survival, measured in moments, purchased with ignorance, and utterly dependent on the mercy of men who wore death as decoration. The poet who had documented hell now walked through something infinitely worse. A future where humanity had become the demons, and divinity had been replaced by an emperor whose very existence was enforced at gunpoint. The archival decks smelled of parchment and desperation. Hadrian led Dante through corridors lined with filing cabinets that stretched to ceilings lost in shadow, each drawer labeled with Gothic script and sealed with wax bearing the same double-headed eagle that adorned every surface of this vessel. The soldiers flanked them, weapons lowered but ready, their rebreathers creating a rhythm like iron lungs breathing for a dying god. They entered a chamber that might have been an interrogation room or a scriptorium. The line between the two seemed blurred in this future. A single table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, a single lumen strip that flickered with the irregular pulse of failing power systems. Hadrian gestured for Dante to sit, and the soldiers took positions by the door, silent as gargoyles. "You wrote about hell," Hadrian said without preamble, settling into his chair with the creak of old bones. "The Inferno, 9 circles of damnation, each punishment perfectly suited to the sin. I've read it, you know. We have 3 copies in the Departamento Historica archives on Holy Terror. Fragments mostly, translated and retranslated until the poetry became prose, became protocol. Dante's restrained hands rested on the table. You've read my work? What remains of it? Your Paradiso was lost entirely in the age of strife. The Purgatorio exists only in partial form, but the Inferno. Hadrian's smile was thin and bitter. That one survived. Humanity always preserves its nightmares better than its hopes. Through the chamber's single viewport, Dante could see stars, but they were wrong. They moved strangely, colors shifting through spectrums that hurt to perceive, as if space itself had become diseased. Occasionally, something vast and shadow-like passed between the stars, occluding them not with darkness, but with a negative presence, an anti-light that made his eyes water and his skull ache. What happened? Dante asked. To the world I knew. Hadrian pulled out his data slate, fingers moving across its surface with the practiced ease of a scribe from any era. A short answer or a long one? The short answer is war. Endless, grinding, galactic war. The long answer would take years to properly explain, and you wouldn't believe most of it anyway. Try me. The old scribe studied him for a moment, then nodded. Very well. In your time, humanity was confined to one planet, Terra, Earth. We thought ourselves the pinnacle of creation, yes? The center of God's attention. He didn't wait for Dante to respond. We were bacteria, thinking the petri dish was the universe. Then we discovered the stars weren't distant lights, but other suns with other worlds. We spread. The dark age of technology, humanity at its apex, creating wonders that even now we cannot replicate. We were gods, Dante. We created thinking machines, mastered genetics, bent physics to our will. And then we learned we weren't alone. Then we learned that some neighbors eat their neighbors. Then the thinking machines turned on us. Then the warp storms came. Hadrian's voice had taken on a recitation quality, as if repeating a liturgy learned by rote. The age of strife, 5,000 years of humanity tearing itself apart while Xenos predators circled. Worlds died, civilizations fell. Terra itself became a patchwork of techno-barbarian kingdoms fighting over ruins. Dante struggled to comprehend the scale. 5,000 years of chaos, twice the span between his birth and Christ's crucifixion. Then came the Emperor, Hadrian continued, and his voice shifted, gained reverence, fear, and something approaching love. He unified Terra, created the Space Marines, transhuman warriors in ceramite armor, launched the Great Crusade to reclaim humanity's lost worlds. For a brief, shining moment, we thought we might achieve paradise, unity, peace, purpose. But half his sons betrayed him. The Horus heresy, a civil war so catastrophic it nearly destroyed everything. The emperor was mortally wounded, entombed on the golden throne, kept alive by the sacrifice of 1,000 psychers daily. And now? Hadrian gestured to the viewport, to the diseased stars beyond. Now we fight. The Imperium of man holds 1,000,000 worlds, and every single one is under siege. Chaos from within, Xenos from without, heretics and demons and things that make your Inferno look like a children's fable. Dante's mind reeled. 1,000,000 worlds. Humanity spread across the galaxy. War without end. And demons, real demons, not metaphorical ones. In my comedy, Dante said slowly, souls were punished according to divine justice. There was order, reason. Even in hell, there was God's plan. There is no plan here, Hadrian replied. Only survival. The Emperor protects. We say that constantly, like a prayer. But protection means being willing to burn 1,000 innocents to ensure one guilty demon doesn't escape. It means feeding 10,000 psychers to the Golden Throne every day to keep the Astronomicon lit. It means... He trailed off as something massive struck the ship. The entire chamber shuddered, lumen strips flickering, and distant klaxons began to wail. The soldiers at the door immediately raised their weapons, vox beads crackling with urgent Gothic. "Status report," one of them barked. The response came through distorted by static. "Attacked, unknown contact, all personnel to battle stations." Another impact, closer this time. The viewport showed something massive moving past, a vessel that shouldn't exist, its hull wrong somehow, angles that geometry shouldn't permit, adorned with symbols that made Dante's eyes burn and his stomach heave. "Chaos Raiders," Hadrian whispered, his face draining of color. "Emperor, preserve us." The soldiers moved immediately, practiced and professional even in the face of terror. One grabbed Hadrian, hauling him toward the door. The other turned to Dante. "What about the artifact?" he asked, rifle trained on the poet. "Leave him," the first soldier replied. "If they board, he's less valuable than our own lives." They fled, taking Hadrian with them, leaving Dante alone in the shuddering chamber, with his plasteel restraints and his useless knowledge of medieval politics and poetic meters. Through the viewport, he watched the enemy ship close, its hull writhed with shapes that might have been decoration or might have been alive, and across its prow, picked out in what looked like dried blood, were words in Gothic script. Dante couldn't read Gothic, but somehow, impossibly, he understood them anyway, as if the words bypassed language entirely and carved themselves directly into his consciousness. "Suffering is divine. Flesh is lies. Truth is pain." The poet who had written about hell was about to learn the difference between documentation and experience. The ship's death throes sounded like a cathedral collapsing. Metal shrieked against metal. Bulkheads groaned under impossible stress, and through it all, the klaxons wailed their liturgy of catastrophe. Dante's restraints bit into his wrists as he braced himself against the table, watching through the viewport as the chaos vessel drew closer, its hull pulsing with biomechanical wrongness. Then the lights died, complete darkness, total and absolute, the kind of blackness that existed before God said fiat lux. Dante's breathing became the only sound he could focus on, ragged and too fast, panic building in his chest like a physical weight. Emergency lumens flickered to life, bathing everything in crimson that made the chamber look like the inside of a wound. The door hissed open, manual override engaged, and Dante stumbled into the corridor on instinct. Staying in that room felt like waiting to be buried alive. The archival decks had transformed into chaos. Servitors, half-human machines that Dante's mind refused to fully process, lurched past carrying data cores and sealed containers. Administratum personnel ran in organized panic, clutching documents to their chests like they were fleeing a burning library, which, Dante supposed, they were. "Alighieri," Hadrian's voice cut through the cacophony. The old scribe pushed through the crowd, data slate forgotten, replaced by a brutal-looking stub revolver that seemed absurdly large in his liver-spotted hands. "Emperor's mercy, you're alive. Come, quickly." "Where?" Dante shouted over the alarms. "Somewhere less likely to be breached." Hadrian grabbed Dante's arm with surprising strength and pulled him down a side passage, away from the main exodus. They ran, or rather, Hadrian ran, and Dante stumbled in his wake, his poet's body unused to this kind of exertion, his lungs burning with recycled air. They descended through maintenance shafts, crawled through service corridors barely wide enough for a man, emerged in sections of the ship that felt older somehow, more degraded. Here the walls were riveted metal rather than welded ceramite, and the skulls decorating the bulkheads had aged to yellowed bone. Finally, Hadrian pulled Dante into what appeared to be a records vault, a small chamber lined floor to ceiling with filing cabinets, lit by a single candle sitting in a holder shaped like a praying cherub. The scribe slammed the heavy door shut and engaged the manual lock, then sagged against it, breathing hard. "Forgive an old man's cowardice." Hadrian gasped. "But I've served the administratum for 93 years without seeing combat, and I don't intend to start now." "Those soldiers," Dante said, cradling his bound wrists. "They just left us. They have their duty. We have ours." Hadrian fumbled with something at his belt, a small keyring heavy with ancient-looking keys. He found one, inserted it into Dante's restraints, and the plasteel bindings clicked open. "There. You're technically evidence of temporal anomaly, which makes you Departamento Historica property, which means I have authorization to manage you as I see fit." Dante rubbed his wrists, watching the old man carefully. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you're Dante Alighieri." Hadrian said it as if that explained everything. When Dante stared blankly, he continued, "Do you understand what you represent? You're from terror before unity, before the age of strife, before everything turned to ash and blood. You come from a time when humanity still believed in redemption, when we thought hell was a place we visited rather than built." His eyes glistened behind his spectacles. "You're proof that we weren't always this." Another impact shook the ship, closer, much closer. Sounds filtered through the vault door, screaming, the distinctive crack hiss of laser gun fire, and something else, chanting, words in a language that made Dante's teeth ache and his vision swim. "They're aboard," Hadrian whispered, pressing himself against the wall. His stub revolver trembled in his hand. "Who are they?" Dante asked. "Those Chaos Raiders you mentioned?" "Worse. Those are Emperor's children, traitor space marines who turned to Slanesh during the heresy." Hadrian's voice dropped to barely audible. "They seek perfection through sensation, and they've learned that suffering provides the most exquisite sensations of all. They're artists, Dante. Artists who work in flesh and pain rather than words and stone." The poet felt something cold settle in his stomach. In his Inferno, he had placed panderers and seducers in the 8th circle, whipped by horned demons for eternity. He had imagined it as divine punishment. He had never imagined those demons could be real, could board a ship, could turn art itself into weapon. "The Inferno, you wrote," Hadrian continued, pulling out his data slate with one hand while keeping the revolver trained on the door with the other. "The punishments you described, contrapasso you called it, the punishment fitting the sin. The Emperor's children would appreciate that philosophy. They'd just apply it differently." Footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy ceramite boots, moving with predatory patience. The chanting grew louder, words resolving into something that might have been high Gothic corrupted into obscenity. "Flesh is canvas, pain is paint, suffering is the brush that reveals truth." Hadrian's finger tightened on the trigger. "Stay behind me. If they breach..." "If they breach, what?" Dante demanded. "What can one old man with a pistol do against armored giants? Die slowly enough to buy you time to run." The scribe said it matter-of-factly, as if martyrdom was simply another form of filing properly completed. The footsteps stopped directly outside the vault door. Silence, heavy and expectant. Then a voice, amplified through a vox grill, but somehow maintaining a cultured, almost gentle tone. "Little scribe, little archivist, we know you're in there. We can smell the fear sweat, taste the adrenaline on the air. You've locked yourself in a box of paper and bones, and you think this saves you." Hadrian didn't respond. His jaw clenched, lips moving in silent prayer. "The Emperor protects, the Emperor protects, the Emperor protects." "We don't want the old one," the voice continued, conversational, almost amused. "The warp-touched one, though. The one who smells of impossible time and displaced reality. That one we'll take. That one has a soul worth examining." The vault door began to glow along its edges, metal heating to cherry red. They were cutting through. Dante looked at Hadrian, truly looked at him. This old man, this bureaucrat who had spent a lifetime filing reports and cataloguing the Imperium's endless administrative detritus, was preparing to die defending a stranger from a time before his great-great-great-grandparents had been born. In Florence, Dante had written about loyalty, honor, the virtues that elevated man above beast. He had intellectualized courage, made it abstract, poetic, safe. Hadrian was about to make it real. "If you have a God you pray to," the old scribe said quietly, "now would be the time." The vault door fell inward with a shriek of tortured metal, and through the smoke stepped something that had once been human. The Space Marine's armor was the color of corrupted amethyst, chased with gold that writhed like living serpents. His helmet bore a face, not a mask, but an actual face, features frozen in an expression caught between ecstasy and agony, eyes that wept liquid gold. He was beautiful. That was the horror of it. Every line of his armor had been crafted with artistic precision, every detail perfect, and that perfection made the wrongness worse. Dante had written about beauty corrupted, about Lucifer's angelic features twisted by pride. This was that nightmare made ceramite and flesh. "There you are," the Space Marine said, his voice like honey poured over razors. "The temporal anomaly, the poet from dead terror." He tilted his head, studying Dante with interest that might have been academic if not for the hunger beneath it. "Do you know what poetry sounds like when screamed? We could discover together." Hadrian fired. The stub revolver barked once, twice, 3 times, the reports deafening in the confined space. The rounds struck the Space Marine's chest plate and ricocheted off harmlessly, leaving barely a scratch. The Chaos Marine didn't even flinch. "Quaint, the old one has spirit." He raised his own weapon, a bolt pistol decorated with screaming faces, and fired once. Hadrian's chest exploded. The old scribe was thrown backward, crashing into a filing cabinet with an impact that sent centuries-old documents cascading to the floor like ash from burning books. He slumped down, leaving a red smear on the cabinet's face, his spectacles cracked, his stub revolver clattering from nerveless fingers. Dante screamed, a wordless sound of horror and rage and impotence. He had never watched a man die violently before. In Florence, death came from fever, age, quiet knives in dark alleys. Not this. Never this casual obliteration of a human being. "Yes," the Chaos Marine breathed. "That's the sound we wanted. Raw, unrefined, the music of a soul confronting its own helplessness." He stepped over Hadrian's body without looking down, approaching Dante with the patience of a connoisseur examining a new acquisition. "You wrote about circles, didn't you? Levels of damnation, each more refined than the last?" Dante backed against the wall, his hands finding nothing, his poet's rhetoric failing him completely. What words could you speak to a nightmare? "We appreciate structure," the Chaos Marine continued. "The discipline of true art requires it, but you limited yourself to 9 circles, poeta. So, provincial. We've discovered thousands of variations, each customized, each perfect for its recipient." He reached out with a gauntleted hand, almost gently, and touched Dante's face. The contact burned like frozen fire. Images flooded Dante's mind, visions of things being done to flesh, creativity applied to suffering, art galleries where the paintings screamed and the sculptures bled. He saw what the emperor's children had become, saw their pursuit of perfection through sensation, saw the depths they had plumbed in search of new experiences. He saw his 9th circle, the frozen lake where traitors were trapped in ice, and saw it transformed. The ice alive, growing inside bodies, flowers of frost blooming through eye sockets and open mouths. Beautiful, horrifying, art. "You see?" The Space Marine's voice was rapturous. "You only imagined damnation. We perfected it." Then the wall exploded, not metaphorically. The actual wall, ceramite and riveted steel, burst inward in a shower of debris as something massive and armored crashed through. For a moment, Dante thought it was another Chaos Marine. Then he saw the color. Deep red, almost burgundy, decorated with blood drops and purity seals. A Space Marine, yes, but not corrupted. This one's armor, while brutal, lacked the artistic obscenity of the Emperor's children. His helmet was a skull-faced mask of ceramite, and the chainsword in his hands roared like a caged animal. "Blood angels," the Chaos Marine hissed, genuine anger cracking his cultured tone. "You corpse-worshipping apes, we were having a conversation." "Your conversation ends here, traitor." The Blood Angel struck with speed that defied his massive size. The chainsword, a weapon Dante's mind could barely process, a sword with rotating teeth that screamed as they spun, caught the Emperor's children Marine across his gorget. Sparks flew, ceramite shrieked, purple armor cracked. The Chaos Marine responded with his bolt pistol, firing at point-blank range. Explosive rounds detonated against crimson armor, cratering it, but not penetrating. The two giants traded blows that would have killed a normal man from the shockwave alone, fighting in the confined vault with the precision of master duelists and the fury of rabid animals. Dante pressed himself against the wall, trying to become invisible, trying not to exist. This wasn't warfare as he understood it. This was demigods destroying each other with religiously sanctioned violence. The Blood Angel drove forward, his chainsword shrieking as it carved through corrupted ceramite. The Emperor's children Marine laughed, actually laughed, even as his armor was compromised, even as blood began to leak from the joints. "Yes, this is sensation. This is..." The chainsword took his head off. The ceramite helmet with its weeping golden face spun through the air and crashed into a filing cabinet, denting the metal. The body stood for a moment, as if uncertain that death had occurred, then collapsed with a thunderous crash. Silence, except for the chainsword's idling growl and Dante's ragged breathing. The Blood Angel turned, and for the first time, Dante found himself facing a Space Marine of the Imperium directly. Up close, the warrior was impossibly large, easily 9 feet tall, his armor adorned with devotional text and purity seals that fluttered in the recycled air. Through the eye lenses of his skull helmet, Dante saw a faint red glow. "You're the temporal anomaly," the Space Marine said. It wasn't a question. His voice, processed through the Vox grill, carried authority absolute. "The scribe reported your presence before the ship's Vox network failed." Dante could only nod. "Can you walk?" Another nod. "Then follow. The unending ledger is lost. We're evacuating surviving personnel to the Crimson Benediction." The Space Marine glanced at Hadrian's corpse, and even through the helmet, Dante sensed something like regret. "The scribe gave his life protecting you. Honor his sacrifice with survival." He turned and strode from the vault, chainsword still idling, leaving Dante alone with the bodies and the burning question. In his Inferno, he had placed those guilty of treachery in the 9th circle, frozen in ice for eternity. Where did you place those who betrayed their own species, turned from emperors to serve dark gods, and transformed art itself into weapon? Perhaps some sins were too terrible even for 9 circles to contain. The Crimson Benediction was a cathedral built to travel between stars. Dante followed the Blood Angel, who had identified himself simply as Brother Matthias, through corridors that seemed designed to humble rather than transport. Every surface bore devotional inscriptions. Every archway was a Gothic masterpiece of skulls and eagles. Every junction opened onto vast spaces where stained glass windows depicted battles Dante couldn't comprehend. They passed through what Matthias called the Librarium, a chamber that made Dante's legs weaken with recognition and alienation simultaneously. Books, thousands of them, tens of thousands. But these were nothing like the hand-copied manuscripts of his era. These were industrial productions, bound in leather that Dante suspected was human, locked with chains, marked with warnings in High Gothic, that his mind kept trying and failing to translate. A figure moved among the stacks, another space marine, but different from Matthias. This one's armor was the same deep red, but his right shoulder guard bore a different insignia, an open book dripping blood. He held a massive tome in hands that could crush a man's skull, reading with an intensity that suggested the words themselves were weapons requiring careful handling. "Brother Librarian Cassius," Matthias called out, his vox grill adding reverence to the title. "The temporal anomaly, as reported." Cassius closed his book with a sound like a coffin sealing and turned his full attention to Dante. Even through his helmet, the poet could feel the weight of that gaze, assessment, calculation, and something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or the intellectual hunger of a scholar confronting an impossibility. Dante Alighieri. Cassius's voice was deeper than Matthias's, resonant with authority that went beyond mere military rank. The Florentine poet, author of La Divina Commedia. He spoke the Italian perfectly, without accent, which was somehow more unsettling than if he'd butchered it. "I've read your work, the fragments that remain." You've read my comedy." Dante's voice sounded pathetically small in this vast chamber. "What survives of it?" Cassius moved closer, and Dante realized the librarian was even larger than Matthias, his armor inscribed with wards and seals that seemed to shift when viewed peripherally. "Your Inferno fascinated me. The structure of your hell, logical, hierarchical, each punishment calibrated to match the sin. It suggested an ordered universe, governed by comprehensible divine justice." "That was my intent," Dante managed, "to show God's plan even in damnation." "Your intent was poetry." Cassius said it gently, but with the finality of stating mathematical proof. "You were a mortal man trying to impose structure on the incomprehensible. Noble. Ultimately futile, but noble." He gestured to the shelves surrounding them. "These are the Codex Demonicus, texts documenting actual demons, their hierarchies, their methods, their weaknesses. Not metaphorical demons representing vice, actual entities from the warp, creatures of pure malevolence and impossible geometry that exist to corrupt and destroy. Your 9 circles?" He paused. "We've documented 900,000 demon subspecies, and that's conservative. The true number is likely infinite." Dante felt the floor tilt beneath him, though intellectually he knew the ship's gravity remained constant. Everything he had written, his life's masterwork, his attempt to understand the nature of sin and redemption, reduced to childhood mythology by the reality of this future. "I didn't know," he whispered. "How could you?" Cassius's tone remained even. "Your era believed in one god, one devil, comprehensible evil that could be catalogued and avoided. You didn't know about the warp, the immaterium, the sea of souls, the realm of pure emotion and thought given form. You couldn't have known that human suffering and vice weren't just abstract concepts, but actual fuel for entities that hunger for our destruction." Brother Matthias shifted uncomfortably. "Brother Librarian, the chapter master requires—" "I know what Dante requires," Cassius interrupted, but without reproach. "And it's not another escort, it's context." He turned back to the poet. "You want to understand where you are, yes? What happened to the world you knew?" Dante nodded, not trusting his voice. Cassius pulled a book from the shelf, smaller than the tome he'd been reading, bound in black leather, locked with a clasp shaped like a weeping eye. "This contains excerpts from the Chronicle of Terror, the Age of Strife. It documents what happened to your planet, our planet, after you died." He unlocked the clasp and the book opened with a sigh that sounded almost human. "After the dark age of technology collapsed, terror descended into barbarism. The techno-kingdoms fought over the scraps of former glory. Mutation ran rampant. The warp storms isolated Earth from the rest of humanity for 5,000 years. Florence, your beautiful Florence, became a radioactive crater. The entire Italian peninsula was scoured to bedrock in the Eurasian Wars. Each sentence landed like a physical blow. Dante saw Beatrice's face, the Arno River, the Duomo rising against the Tuscan sky, all erased, burned away, reduced to geological notation in a chronicle of catastrophe. The emperor arose during the Unification Wars, Cassius continued, reading from the text with the practiced cadence of liturgy. He conquered terror, rebuilt it, prepared humanity for the stars. But the cost? The librarian paused, and even through his helmet, Dante sensed something like sorrow. The cost was everything you knew. Every culture, every language, every philosophy from before unity was subordinated to the imperial truth. Your comedy survived only because it served imperial purposes, a useful allegory for the necessity of punishment, the dangers of vice, the structure of absolute authority. "Still with us, Dante?" Brother Matthias asked, his vox grill softening the question into something almost kind. "This is a lot for a mortal mind to process. If you need to rest." "No." Dante's voice surprised him with its firmness. "Show me more. I need to understand. I need to see what we became." Cassius tilted his head, and Dante had the impression the librarian was smiling behind his helmet. "There. That's the spirit that wrote the comedy. Very well, poeta. I'll show you our hell. But understand, what you documented with words, we live with flesh. Your 9 circles are a prologue. Our reality is the full text." He led Dante deeper into the librarium, past sections marked with warnings, restricted, quarantined, access by ordination only. They entered a chamber where the books were kept behind armored glass, each volume pulsing with a faint luminescence that made Dante's eyes water. "The Grimoire Hereticus," Cassius explained. "Texts recovered from chaos cults, demon-summoning rituals, philosophical treatises by those who turned from the Emperor's light. We keep them not to use, but to understand our enemy." He stopped before a particular case, where a book bound in what looked disturbingly like tattooed skin lay open to an illuminated page. This was written by a word-bearer, a traitor legion that turned to chaos worship during the Horus heresy. It's their interpretation of the Eightfold Path, the philosophy of chaos undivided. Cassius's voice dropped to barely audible. "They cite your Inferno as inspiration, Dante. They took your structured hell and inverted it. Where you placed sins in descending circles, they placed virtues. Pride, gluttony, wrath. What you punished, they celebrated. They turned your moral universe inside out and made it a roadmap to damnation." Dante stared at the text, unable to read the words, but feeling their malevolence like radiation. His poetry, his attempt to guide souls toward God, perverted into heretical scripture. "This isn't your fault," Cassius said quietly. "Art is neutral. Only its application carries moral weight. But you should know, your words echo through 11,000 years, sometimes as wisdom, sometimes as corruption, always as evidence that humanity once dreamed of something better than endless war." The Crimson Benediction's observation deck offered an unobstructed view of the void, and Dante found himself drawn to it despite every instinct screaming to hide from such vastness. Brother Cassius had given him a data slate, a simplified version, he'd explained, designed for mortal scholars rather than space marines, loaded with historical texts, theological treatises, and carefully curated excerpts from the Imperium's 11,000-year chronicle. Dante had spent what he guessed was 6 hours reading, though the ship's artificial lighting made time meaningless. 6 hours absorbing horrors that made his fictional Inferno seem like pastoral poetry. The Horus heresy, the scouring, the age of apostasy, the reign of blood, Atrocities stacked upon atrocities, each generation finding new ways to brutalize itself while fighting external threats that defied sanity. Now he stood before the reinforced viewport, watching stars that seemed to pulse with diseased colors, and tried to process what he'd learned. The reflection in the armored glass showed a man who looked decades older than when he'd awakened aboard the unending ledger. Face haggard, eyes haunted, shoulders slumped under the weight of unwanted knowledge. Poeta, a voice feminine and soft, speaking in perfect Tuscan. Dante Alighieri of Florence. Dante spun around. The observation deck was empty except for himself and the voice's source. A servitor station in the corner, its cogitator screen glowing with amber script. But servitors were mindless drone workers, half-human machines with no capacity for individual speech. This shouldn't be possible. "Don't be afraid," the voice continued, emanating from the cogitator's Vox speaker. "I mean you no harm. I've been searching for you since you manifested in this timeline." "Who are you?" Dante whispered, approaching the station cautiously. "A friend, an ally, someone who understands what you've lost." A pause, and then, "Someone who knows what you seek." "I seek nothing but understanding." "Liar." The word was gentle, almost affectionate. "You seek her, Beatrice, your beloved. The woman who inspired your Paradiso, who represented divine love incarnate in your poetry. You want to know if she exists here, if some fragment of her survived across 11 millennia." Dante's heart clenched. He hadn't allowed himself to think about Beatrice. Thinking about her made the loss too real, the distance between his past and this present too insurmountable. "She died centuries before I did, in my time. Death is not always an ending." The voice took on urgency now. "The warp, the Imperium, it exists outside linear time. Souls persist there, Dante. The dead aren't truly gone. They transform, transmute, become part of the great ocean of consciousness that underlies reality. The librarian told me the warp is hell itself, a realm of demons and madness. Cassius told you Imperial propaganda." Sharp now, almost angry. "The warp is what humanity makes of it. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, demons exist there, but so do angels, Dante. So do saints. So do the souls of the faithful, waiting for reunion with their loved ones." The voice softened again. "So does Beatrice." It was too much. Too perfect. Too exactly what a desperate man wanted to hear. Dante had written the Divine Comedy precisely because he understood how grief could drive people to believe impossible things, how loss could make even rational men susceptible to beautiful lies. "You're trying to corrupt me," he said, backing away from the cogitator. "Whatever you are, demon, chaos entity, corrupted machine spirit, you're using my own words, my own longing, against me. I'm using truth." The voice grew multiple, harmonizing with itself, becoming a chorus that shouldn't fit through a single speaker. "You wrote about hell, purgatory, and paradise. You imagined a structure to the afterlife. What if you were right, Poeta? What if your vision was prophetic rather than poetic? What if the Divine Comedy wasn't fiction but revelation?" The cogitator screen shifted, displaying images, impossible images that hurt to perceive. He saw a woman with Beatrice's face, but wrong, features too perfect, beauty that cut like broken glass. She stood in a realm of shifting colors and impossible geometries, surrounded by creatures that might have been angels if angels were made of screaming light and incomprehensible desire. "Come to the warp," the voices whispered, now unmistakably plural, unmistakably inhuman. "Write your true comedy. Not the one you imagined from mortal ignorance, but the one you'll experience from divine revelation. We'll show you wonders. We'll reunite you with all you've lost. We'll give you eternity to craft poetry that will echo through dimensions." Dante's hand found the data slate in his pocket, gripping it like an anchor to reality. He thought of Hadrian, dying to protect him, of Brother Matthias cutting down the Emperor's children marine, of Cassius showing him the corrupted texts that cited his work as inspiration for heresy. "No," he said, his voice steady despite his hammering heart. "I know what you are. Cassius taught me. You're from the warp, either a demon of Slanesh, god of excess and corrupted art, or something similar. You're offering me everything I desire because that desire itself is the trap." The voices laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine delight, as if his resistance was entertaining rather than offensive. "Clever poeta. Yes, we serve she who thirsts. Yes, we seek your soul, but our offer remains genuine. We can reunite you with your Beatrice. We can give you the divine vision you always sought. The only price is surrender." The price is damnation. Damnation by whose definition? The corpse emperors, the brutal Imperium that turns humans into servitors and feeds psychers to a dying god. They've made your comedy real, Dante. They've created a hell that spans 1,000,000 worlds. We simply offer an alternative, paradise through perfection, heaven through sensation, transcendence through art. The viewport darkened, and for a moment, Dante saw it, really saw it. A realm beyond reality, where emotion became landscape, where thought shaped matter, where the boundaries between self and other dissolved into infinite experience. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was everything his Paradiso had tried and failed to capture. And somewhere in that impossible space, he felt her. Not saw, not heard, but felt. A presence that resonated with memories of Beatrice, her laugh, her grace, the way she'd looked at him that one time in Florence when they were both young and the world seemed full of poetry rather than pain. His hand trembled on the data slate. One step, one choice, one surrender, and he could have everything back. "Brother Cassius warned you'd try this," Dante said, his voice cracking. "He said Slaneshi corruption often manifests as loved ones, offering impossible reunions. He said the demon would wear Beatrice's face because I wrote about her, because my desire for her is documented, weaponizable. And yet you're tempted." The voices purred with satisfaction. "Because part of you knows we're telling truth. The warp is real. The dead persist. Your Beatrice exists in some form. These are facts the Imperium can't deny, only forbid you from pursuing." Dante closed his eyes and thought about his comedy. He'd written it as a moral instruction, a guide for souls seeking salvation. He'd structured it carefully. Hell below, purgatory rising, paradise above. He'd believed in absolute good and evil, in divine justice, in redemption through suffering and faith. This future had proven his structure false. Evil wasn't punished by circles of descending torment, but rewarded with power. Good wasn't rewarded with paradise, but with endless war and grinding survival. The universe wasn't just or ordered or comprehensible, but that didn't make the alternative, surrendering to demons who wore his beloved's face, any less horrific. "My answer is no," Dante said, opening his eyes. "Now and forever, no." The voices shrieked, unity fracturing into cacophony. The cogitator screen shattered, spraying glass across the observation deck. The servitor station sparked and died, smoke rising from fried circuitry. Dante stood alone in the sudden silence, shaking, tears running down his face, mourning Beatrice again. This time not her mortal death 700 years ago, but the final, definitive knowledge that he would never see her again, in any world, in any form, because any reunion offered in this future would be corruption wearing her face. He had written about hell. Now he understood it wasn't a place you visited. It was a choice you refused over and over until refusal itself became the only paradise available. Brother Cassius found him still standing by the shattered cogitator, face wet with tears he hadn't bothered to wipe away. The librarian said nothing at first, simply stood beside Dante in the observation deck's gloom, his massive armored presence somehow comforting rather than intimidating. "They came for you," Cassius finally said. It wasn't a question. "Slanesh," Dante confirmed, his voice hoarse. "Offering me Beatrice, offering me paradise, offering me everything my comedy imagined, if only I'd surrender. And you refused." "I refused." Cassius nodded slowly. "Then you're stronger than you know, Poeta. Most mortals don't survive their first direct contact with chaos entities. Those who do often carry corruption without realizing it. Seeds planted in psyche, waiting to germinate. But you..." The librarian's helmet turned, studying Dante with those hidden eyes. "You understood the trap. That's remarkable for someone with no training in resisting warp predation. I had excellent teachers." Dante gestured at the data slate still clutched in his hand. "Your texts, the warnings you gave me, Hadrian's sacrifice, all of it prepared me to recognize beautiful lies when I heard them. Still, most men would choose the lie." Cassius moved to the viewport, gazing out at the diseased stars. "The truth is unbearable. The Imperium is brutal, unjust, built on mountains of corpses and oceans of suffering. We serve an emperor who may or may not still be conscious, fed by the daily sacrifice of 10,000 psychers. We fight wars we cannot win against enemies we cannot comprehend, and at the end of it all, there is no paradise waiting, only death, and the slim hope that our sacrifice bought humanity one more day." "Then why fight?" Dante asked. "If the situation is hopeless." "Because hopeless isn't the same as meaningless." Cassius turned back to him. "You wrote your comedy because you believed human choices mattered, yes? That souls could be saved or damned based on how they lived? That structure held. Not the specific structure you imagined, not 9 circles and ascending terraces, but the core truth. Choices matter. Resistance matters. Every time a man like you refuses corruption, the universe becomes infinitesimally less dark." Dante thought about his Inferno, about the careful categories he'd created. The lustful in the second circle, blown by eternal winds. The gluttons in the third, lying in filth. The violent, the fraudulent, the treacherous, each assigned their punishment according to divine logic. "I was wrong about so much," he said quietly. "Sin isn't that simple. Punishment isn't that structured. God, if he exists, isn't that comprehensible." "No," Cassius agreed. "But you were right about one thing. You placed the traitors in the deepest circle, frozen in ice, eternally separated from God's warmth. You understood that the worst sin isn't passion or violence or even cruelty. It's betrayal, turning from those who trust you, abandoning your oaths." His voice hardened. "The Horus heresy, when half the emperor's sons turned traitor, that was your 9th circle made real, and we've been fighting to contain that betrayal for 10,000 years." A chime sounded through the observation deck, 3 notes, descending, mournful. Cassius straightened immediately. "What is that?" Dante asked. "Funeral rites, for scribe Hadrian and the other casualties from the unending ledger." The librarian paused. "You should attend. The old man died protecting you. The least you can offer is witness." The ship's Chapel of Martyrs was a vast space that seemed too large to exist within the Crimson Benediction's hull, as if dimensions had been bent to accommodate something more important than mere geometry. Stained glass windows depicted scenes of battle and sacrifice, lit from behind by some source Dante couldn't identify. Rows of pews stretched toward an altar dominated by a massive golden eagle, wings spread, eyes rendered in rubies that seemed to weep light. Perhaps 3 dozen people filled the chapel, space marines of the Blood Angels, mortal crew members in dark robes, a handful of servitors standing motionless at attention. At the front, arranged on individual biers, lay 23 bodies recovered from the unending ledger. Hadrian was among them, his broken body wrapped in simple cloth, his shattered spectacles resting on his chest. Dante took a seat in the back, feeling like an intruder. These people had lives, relationships, duties within the Imperium's vast machinery. Hadrian had been one of them, a cog in the administrative apparatus certainly, but a person with 93 years of accumulated experiences, knowledge, perhaps even joy. A space marine in ornate armor approached the altar. The chapter chaplain, Cassius had explained, responsible for spiritual matters. His armor was black rather than red, adorned with skulls and purity seals, and his helmet bore a skull face so realistic it might have been actual bone fused to ceramite. "We gather in the God Emperor's sight," the chaplain's voice boomed, processed through his vox grill into something between sermon and battle cry. "To honor the fallen, to remember their sacrifice, to consecrate their deaths in service to humanity's survival." The congregation responded in unison. "The Emperor protects." Administratum scribe Hadrian served for 93 years, the chaplain continued, gesturing to the old man's body, cataloguing, filing, preserving the Imperium's memory. His work seemed insignificant. What is one scribe among billions? What are records compared to battles? But without memory, we are beasts. Without documentation, we lose the lessons paid for in blood. Hadrian's life was spent fighting entropy itself, preserving knowledge against the darkness that seeks to erase all human achievement. Dante felt fresh tears forming. In Florence, he'd been celebrated, a diplomat, a poet, a man of influence and culture. Hadrian had been anonymous, one bureaucrat among uncounted millions, filing reports that perhaps no one would ever read. Yet the old man had died protecting Dante, had made split-second choice to value a stranger's life over his own continued existence. That was heroism, not the epic glory Dante had written about in his comedy, where virtuous pagans resided in limbo and heroes fought symbolic demons. Real heroism, immediate and brutal and utterly selfless. "In the Emperor's light, the fallen find peace," the chaplain intoned. "In his service, their deaths gain meaning. In our memory, they achieve immortality." The congregation responded, "By his will alone." After the service, as the bodies were carried away for whatever funerary rites the Imperium practiced, Dante found himself approached by a mortal woman, middle-aged, her face marked with the tattoos of administratum service, her eyes red from crying. "You're the one Hadrian protected?" she said without preamble. "I am. I'm sorry. I wish—" "Don't," she cut him off sharply. "Don't apologize for surviving." Hadrian made his choice. He valued knowledge, preserved it his entire life. Your knowledge, stranger. Living history from before unity. He died doing what he believed in. She paused, then added quietly, "I worked with him for 40 years. He never married, had no children, spent his life in the archives. I think he was waiting for something important enough to matter. You were that thing." She walked away before Dante could respond, leaving him standing in the emptying chapel with the weight of another life's meaning pressing down on his shoulders. "Come," Brother Cassius said, appearing beside him like a crimson ghost. "The chapter master wants to meet you, and there's something you need to see, something that will help you understand what your writings became in this future. More corruption? More heresy citing my work? No." Cassius's voice carried something that might have been anticipation. The opposite. Your Inferno wasn't only used by chaos. The Imperium found its own uses for your vision, and you're not going to like what we made of it. The chapter master's strategium was a war room disguised as a cathedral, or perhaps the reverse. Dante couldn't tell where military function ended and religious devotion began. Hololith displays projected star charts and tactical data in columns of light that rose like pillars. The walls were lined with banners bearing battle honors stretching back millennia, each one a record of blood spilled and victories purchased at terrible cost. Chapter: Master Dante, no relation, though the shared name made the poet's skin prickle with uncanny recognition, stood before the central hololith. He had removed his helmet, revealing a face that looked simultaneously ancient and ageless. Scars cross-hatched his features, and his eyes held a weariness that transcended physical exhaustion. Dante Alighieri, the chapter master said, his voice carrying the weight of 1,500 years of warfare. A strange coincidence, our shared name. Though I was christened Luis Dante of Baal Secundus, and you're the original article from Old Terra. He gestured to a chair, human-sized, bolted to the floor. Sit. We need to discuss your future, and it won't be a comfortable conversation. Dante sat, feeling even smaller than usual in the presence of these transhuman warriors. Brother Cassius took position beside the chapter master, and Brother Matthias stood at the chamber's entrance, a silent guardian. Cassius tells me you resisted Slaaneshi corruption, Chapter Master Dante continued. That alone makes you remarkable. Most mortals break, those who don't often carry hidden taint. But the Librarius has examined you psychically, from a distance, non-invasively, and found no evidence of demonic influence. He paused, which presents us with a problem. A problem? Dante asked. You're valuable, potentially dangerously so. The chapter master manipulated the hololith, and the star charts dissolved, replaced by document scans, ancient fragmentary texts in languages Dante recognized, his own handwriting, his comedy, preserved across 11,000 years. Your work survived because the Imperium found it useful, not as poetry, as instruction manual. Brother Cassius took over the explanation, his voice carrying the pedagogical tone of a teacher presenting difficult material. After the Horus heresy, the Imperium faced a crisis. How do you identify corruption before it manifests? How do you categorize sin when the consequences include literal demonic possession? The Ecclesiarchy, the Imperial Church, needed a framework. The hololith shifted again, now showing what looked like administrative documents. Dante couldn't read Gothic, but he recognized the structure, lists, categories, hierarchies, his hierarchies. They used your Inferno, Cassius said quietly. Your 9 circles became 9 categories of heresy. Your contrapasso, punishment fitting the crime, became the basis for penal regulations. Your vision of hell as an organized system of judgment and damnation, we made it real. Dante's mouth went dry. What do you mean, made it real? Chapter Master Dante's scarred face showed something that might have been regret. Penal worlds, prison colonies where criminals are sent based on their crimes. The Imperium has 9 classifications of penal servitude, each corresponding to one of your circles. The structure isn't exact, we adapted it, but the philosophy is yours. Organized damnation, systematic punishment, hell as administrative policy. The hololith displayed images now, worlds of ice where prisoners froze slowly, their labor extracted until cold claimed them. Desert worlds where the convicted toiled in furnace heat, mining ore for the Imperium's endless war machine. Ocean worlds where criminals were chained to drilling platforms, exposed to storms and isolation until madness or drowning provided release. This is Plutarch 9, Cassius said, highlighting one particular world. Penal Classification 7, for those guilty of cowardice in battle. The prisoners are sent into mine shafts where enemy Xenos are known to breed. They clear the tunnels with nothing but improvised weapons, facing certain death. We call it the Circle of the Violent. Sound familiar? Dante stared at the images, horror building in his chest. His 7th circle, where the violent were punished in a river of boiling blood, or transformed into bleeding trees, or chased by dogs across burning sands. Metaphor made literal, poetry transformed into penal code. And the ninth classification? Dante asked, though he already knew. Traitors. Chapter Master Dante's voice hardened. Those who betray the Imperium, who turn to chaos, who abandon their oaths, they're sent to Cryos Ultima, a world at the edge of Imperial space where the temperature never rises above -200 degrees. Prisoners are flash-frozen alive and stored in vast warehouses, not killed, preserved, suffering stretched across centuries until their bodies finally fail, or the Imperium needs to make room for new traitors. The frozen lake, Dante whispered. The ninth circle, Cocytus. Your words gave us permission, Cassius said, and his voice carried something that might have been accusation or might have been simple statement of fact. You wrote that the worst sinners deserved eternal torment. You made damnation seem not just necessary but just. The Imperium read that and thought, yes, this is how we should handle criminals. This is the structure divine punishment should take. Dante stood abruptly, the chair scraping against metal flooring. I was writing allegory, moral instruction. I never intended. I would never. He stopped, words failing him, confronted with the magnitude of unintended consequences. Intent is irrelevant, Chapter Master Dante said, not unkindly. Your poetry survived because it was useful, and in the Imperium, utility often means suffering. We needed a framework for punishment. You provided one. That we implemented it literally rather than metaphorically is our sin, not yours. But I gave you the blueprint. Dante's voice cracked. I created the structure you filled with flesh and pain. How many millions have suffered because I wrote the Inferno? How many have died in conditions I imagined as divine punishment but you implemented as imperial policy? Silence in the strategium. Even the hololith seemed to dim, as if the machine itself recognized the weight of the question. Billions, Cassius finally answered. Across 10,000 years. Billions, perhaps trillions. The penal system is vast, Poeta. Your 9 circles became the foundation, but the Imperium built upon them, expanded them, refined them. Your vision of structured damnation became so deeply embedded in imperial doctrine that most citizens don't even remember it originated with a Florentine poet from before Unity. Dante's legs gave out. He sat heavily, hands shaking, staring at nothing. In Florence, he'd believed words had power. He'd crafted his comedy with such care, selecting each punishment to match each sin, creating what he thought was a moral guide for souls seeking salvation. Instead, he'd created a torture manual that had been implemented across a galaxy. Why show me this? He asked hoarsely. Why not let me remain ignorant? Because we need you to make a choice, Chapter Master Dante said, leaning forward, his ancient eyes boring into the poet's soul. You're not just a curiosity from the past. You're a symbol. If word spreads that the actual Dante Alighieri has appeared in the 41st millennium, it will have consequences. Some will see it as a sign from the emperor. Others will see you as a heretic whose writings inspired corruption. The Ecclesiarchy will want to either canonize you or burn you, possibly both. What choice? Dante managed. Disappear, Cassius said. We can arrange it. Give you a new identity, relocate you to a quiet world where you can live out your days in relative peace. You'll never write again. Too recognizable, too dangerous, but you'll be safe. Or, Dante asked, because there was always an or. Chapter Master Dante's scarred face split into something that might have been a smile. Or you stay with us. Help us understand what you actually meant when you wrote the comedy. Help us dismantle the system we built on your foundations, or at least reform it. Use your voice, the original voice, to challenge 11,000 years of misinterpretation. That would make me a target. Undoubtedly. But you're Dante Alighieri. You documented hell because you believed truth mattered, even when truth was damning. Does truth still matter to you? Even when that truth is, your greatest work became a weapon, and only you can help unmake what we made of it. Dante closed his eyes. He thought of Hadrian, dying to protect knowledge, of Beatrice, whose memory he'd refused to trade for demonic corruption, of his comedy, written in Florence with such certainty about justice and judgment and the ordered nature of divine punishment. All of it wrong, all of it weaponized, all of it his responsibility. When I wrote the Purgatorio, he said quietly, I imagined souls ascending a mountain, purging their sins through willing suffering, choosing redemption. Is that even possible in this future? I don't know, Chapter Master Dante admitted. But if it is, perhaps it starts with you choosing to atone for what your words became. Not because you're guilty, you wrote in innocence, but because atonement is the only path forward. Dante asked to see the warp, not travel through it. Even he wasn't that reckless. But witness it. Understand the actual inferno that existed beneath reality's skin. Chapter Master Dante and Cassius exchanged glances that spoke of long partnership and unspoken communication, then agreed. If the poet was going to help dismantle the system built on his words, he needed to understand what he'd inadvertently been writing about all along. They took him to the librarium's most restricted section, past wards that made his teeth ache and his vision blur, into a chamber that felt wrong in ways his medieval mind couldn't articulate. The walls were covered in inscriptions that seemed to move when viewed peripherally, and the air tasted of ozone and something else, something that made his hindbrain scream warnings about predators and poison. In the chamber's center sat a device that looked like a bronze sphere, held within a brass framework, covered in lenses and dials and mechanisms Dante couldn't begin to comprehend. Brother Cassius approached it with the reverence of a priest approaching an altar. This is an Imperium viewer, the librarian explained. One of the few devices from the dark age of technology that we've maintained. It allows limited, controlled observation of the warp without direct exposure. You'll see what we see when we look beyond reality's veil. Is it safe? Dante asked, though he suspected the answer. Safe is relative. It won't kill you or corrupt you immediately. Beyond that? Cassius shrugged, the gesture oddly human despite his massive armor. We'll monitor for psychological damage. If your mind begins to break, we'll pull you out. Probably. Reassuring, Dante muttered. Truth rarely is. Cassius activated the device. The sphere began to rotate, lenses clicking into alignment, and suddenly the chamber was filled with light that wasn't light. A glow that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere, casting shadows that moved independently of any source. Look into the primary lens, Cassius instructed. Don't try to understand what you see. Don't try to categorize it. Just witness. Dante stepped forward and looked. The warp was everything. It was an ocean of emotion given form, where thoughts became geography and feelings shaped matter. He saw mountains of rage, red and jagged, where armies of demons fought each other for the joy of violence. He saw lakes of despair, oily and black, where souls drowned in their own accumulated sorrows. He saw forests of desire, impossibly beautiful and infinitely corrupt, where every tree bore fruit that screamed when bitten. But it wasn't structured. That was the horror of it. His Inferno had been organized, 9 circles descending in logical progression, each punishment calibrated to match its sin. The warp was chaos incarnate. Punishments were random, suffering without purpose, torment that existed simply because torment could exist. He saw souls, human souls he somehow knew, twisted into forms that mocked their former existence. A merchant who'd hoarded wealth transformed into a creature that endlessly consumed itself, intestines sprouting from its mouth to devour its own flesh. A politician who'd spread lies become a thing of mouths and tongues, each one speaking different contradictions, unable to stop the cascade of false words. Contrapasso, Dante whispered, but wrong, so wrong. Your version had divine logic, Cassius said from behind him. Justice, even in damnation. This, the librarian's voice carried profound weariness. This is what happens when punishment exists without judge, when suffering is purpose rather than consequence. Dante saw deeper, past the surface horrors, into the warp's fundamental nature. It was beautiful and terrible simultaneously. Pure emotion, pure thought, existence without the constraints of physical law, and it was alive. Not metaphorically alive, but actually terribly conscious. Four presences dominated the landscape, massive beyond comprehension, gods in the truest sense. He couldn't look at them directly. His mind simply refused to process their totality. But he felt them. Khorne, the blood god, rage and martial pride amplified to cosmic scale. Nurgle, the plague lord, decay and acceptance and the comfort of entropy. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, ambition and hope and change twisted into manipulation. Slaanesh, she who thirsts, pleasure and art and perfection corrupted into addiction. The ruinous powers, Cassius named them. They aren't metaphorical, Dante. They're real, born from humanity's collective emotional excess, fed by our wars, our despair, our ambitions, our desires. We created them, and now they seek to destroy us. Or worse, transform us into sources of greater suffering to feed their eternal hunger. Dante saw something else then. Deep in the warp, anchored to reality by threads of belief and sacrifice, was a light. Golden, fierce, slowly dying. He felt its attention turn toward him, and for a moment, just a fraction of a second, he understood what it was. The Emperor, the God Emperor of mankind, dying on his golden throne, burning himself out to keep the Astronomicon lit, to hold back the tide of chaos through sheer stubborn will. Not a god by Dante's Christian understanding, but something that had become godlike through the belief of trillions and the sacrifice of millennia. And the Emperor was in pain. Constant, eternal, universe-spanning pain. Dying for 10,000 years, unable to heal, unable to rest, unable to do anything but burn and burn and burn while his Imperium committed atrocities in his name. I wrote about Christ's sacrifice, Dante said, his voice barely audible. I imagined divine love as willing suffering for humanity's salvation. But this is too much. No being should endure this. No purpose justifies this torture. And yet he endures, Chapter Master Dante said, his voice rough with something that might have been grief or might have been pride. Because the alternative is worse. If the Emperor fails, the Astronomicon dies. If the Astronomicon dies, humanity's faster-than-light travel becomes impossible. If FTL travel ends, the Imperium fragments. And if the Imperium fragments, chaos consumes us piecemeal. The Emperor's suffering purchases our continued existence, one soul's damnation to prevent species-wide extinction. Dante forced himself to look away from the golden light, back to the warp's general chaos. And now, with context, he understood what he was seeing. This wasn't hell as punishment. This was hell as consequence. The natural result of emotion existing without restraint, of consciousness unbound by physical limitation, of human nature amplified to cosmic scale and given literal form. My circles were wrong, he said. I imagined punishment imposed by God. But this is self-inflicted. These souls weren't judged and sentenced. They made themselves into this through what they did, what they believed, what they desired. Now you understand, Cassius said quietly. The warp is a mirror. It reflects humanity back at ourselves, amplified, distorted, but fundamentally true. Every demon is born from human emotion. Every torture exists because humans imagined it first. The Imperium didn't create hell. We just gave it structure, made it policy, tried to impose order on chaos. Using my words as template, using your words as inspiration. The actual implementation is ours. We can't blame a poet from 11,000 years ago for how we chose to read his work. Dante watched souls spiral through the warp's impossible geometries, and he thought about his comedy. He'd written it because he believed in order, in justice, in a comprehensible universe where virtue was rewarded and vice punished. He'd needed to believe that suffering had meaning, that death led somewhere, that God's plan existed even if mortals couldn't fully grasp it. This future had proven all of that wrong. Suffering was random. Death led to the warp's chaos. And God, if the Emperor qualified, was too busy dying to implement any plan beyond survive another day. Yet somehow, humanity endured. Not through divine intervention or cosmic justice, but through sheer stubborn refusal to accept extinction. Through men like Hadrian dying to protect knowledge. Through warriors like the Blood Angels fighting battles they couldn't win. Through the Emperor burning himself to ash to keep one golden light lit in the darkness. "I want to write again," Dante said suddenly. "Not the comedy, that's done, and its damage is already spread across the galaxy. But something new, something that captures what I've seen here. The truth about hell, not the metaphor." "That would make you a target," Chapter Master Dante warned. "The Ecclesiarchy won't appreciate having their doctrine questioned by the very poet they've been citing for 10 millennia. "I don't care." Dante pulled his gaze away from the Imperium viewer, turning to face the two space marines. "Hadrian died so knowledge could survive. The least I can do is create knowledge worth protecting, even if it destroys me." Cassius deactivated the device, and the warp's impossible vistas faded back into normal reality, though normal seemed a generous description for the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. The librarian studied Dante for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well, poeta, but understand, if you write truth, you'll be writing heresy. If you write heresy, we'll have to protect you. And protecting you means we're choosing sides in a theological debate that could fracture the Imperium." "Isn't the Imperium already fractured?" Dante asked. "Yes," Chapter Master Dante admitted, "but there are degrees of broken. We can still get worse. We can always get worse." "Then perhaps," Dante said quietly, "it's time we try getting better instead." The Crimson Benediction maintained what Cassius called a scriptorum, a chamber where mortal scribes labored to copy documents, transcribe orders, and maintain the chapter's extensive records. It was to this chamber that Dante was brought 3 days after witnessing the warp, given parchment manufactured from some synthetic material he didn't recognize, and provided with quills that wrote in ink that would supposedly last millennia. "Write," Chapter Master Dante had commanded. "Write what you saw, write what you understand, write truth, and damn the consequences." So Dante wrote, not in terza rima, the intricate rhyme scheme of his comedy, not in Italian, which existed now only as a dead language fragment buried in the Administratum's endless archives. He wrote in Gothic, laboriously, with Cassius's patient instruction, because if his words were to matter, they needed to be readable by the Imperium's citizens. He called it the Testimonia Inferni, the testament of hell, not a poem, a witness statement, a documentation of what he'd seen through the Imperium viewer and what he'd learned about the system built on his earlier work's foundations. "I am Dante Alighieri of Florence," he began, "and I was wrong. In my youth, in a time before unity, I wrote a comedy of the afterlife. I imagined hell as structured, logical, governed by divine justice. I created 9 circles where sinners received punishments calibrated to their crimes. I believed this was truth revealed through poetic inspiration. I was wrong. Hell is not a place. Hell is a choice. Hell is what we make when we allow emotion to exist without restraint, when we pursue power without wisdom, when we implement justice without mercy. The Imperium has built a hell using my words as blueprint. 9 categories of penal servitude, organized damnation, systematic torture justified by the appearance of divine order. But there is no divine order. There is only human suffering, amplified and perpetuated across a million worlds. I wrote metaphor, you made it literal, and in doing so, you damned billions in my name. He wrote for hours, pausing only when his hand cramped or when Cassius brought him water and something the Space Marine called Nutri-Paste that tasted like absolutely nothing but apparently contained all necessary sustenance. The other scribes in the chamber worked around him, their quills scratching a rhythm that reminded Dante of Florence, of the scriptoriums where monks had copied religious texts with the same dedicated patience. But these scribes weren't monks. They were administratum servants, their faces marked with service tattoos, their eyes carrying the dull glaze of people who'd seen too much and felt too little. They copied whatever was given to them without reading it, without questioning it, without caring whether the words they transcribed were truth or lies or propaganda. That was me, Dante said quietly to Cassius during one break. In Florence, I wrote what I believed without questioning whether my beliefs were true. I created a structure because structure made me feel safe, made the universe comprehensible. I never considered how my need for order might be weaponized. All writers face this, Cassius replied, reviewing the pages Dante had completed. Words are tools. Tools can build or destroy, depending on who wields them. Your mistake wasn't writing the Inferno. Your mistake was believing your metaphor was complete, sufficient, the final word on damnation. What should I have written instead? Uncertainty, humility, the acknowledgement that one mortal poet couldn't possibly comprehend the totality of divine justice, if such a thing even exists. The librarian paused, then added, "But you were young when you wrote the comedy, yes? Young and brilliant and convinced of your own righteousness. That's not a sin, Dante. That's simply being human." Dante returned to his writing. The next section addressed the warp directly. "I have witnessed the immaterium, the sea of souls, the realm beneath reality where emotion becomes geography. It is not the hell I imagined. It is worse and better simultaneously. Worse because there is no justice there. Suffering exists without purpose. Souls are twisted not by divine judgment, but by their own accumulated emotional weight. The demons that inhabit the warp are not God's instruments of punishment. They are fragments of human consciousness, pieces of ourselves given terrible independence. Better because it is honest. The warp does not pretend to righteousness. It does not claim to be just. It simply is, a mirror reflecting humanity's nature without filters or lies. The Imperium's hell, built on my foundations, claims divine sanction. It pretends that organized torture serves the Emperor's will, but I have seen the Emperor's light in the warp, and he is too busy dying to sanction anything. The hell we've created is ours alone. We cannot blame God, cannot cite divine mandate. We built this, we maintain this, and we must unmake it." A hand fell on Dante's shoulder, startling him from his writing trance. He turned to find Brother Matthias, the blood angel who'd saved him from the Emperor's children marine aboard the unending ledger. "The poet who fights with words," Matthias said, his vox grill making the observation sound almost approving. "Better than fighting with chainswords, I suppose. Cleaner, at least." "Is it better?" Dante asked. "Words built the system. More words might just reinforce it, or destroy it." Matthias picked up one of the completed pages, scanning it with the enhanced reading speed of a space marine. "This will infuriate the Ecclesiarchy. They've spent 10,000 years using your comedy as scriptural support for Imperial doctrine. You're calling them liars. I'm calling them wrong. There's a difference. Not to them. Matthias set the page down carefully. But perhaps that's necessary. The Imperium has ossified Poeta. We repeat the same strategies, fight the same wars, maintain the same structures because changing anything risks collapse. We've become so rigid that we're brittle. One good blow might shatter everything. Is that what you want? Collapse? I want change, Matthias said, and his voice carried a frustration that transcended his Vox Grill's processing. I'm 400 years old. I've fought on 300 worlds. I've killed Xenos and heretics and traitors beyond counting. And every battle is the same. Brutal, desperate, Pyrrhic. We win, but barely. We hold, but just. And the next world is worse. He paused, then added quietly, your comedy suggested that suffering could be transcended, that purgatory led to paradise. The Imperium has no purgatory, only an eternal inferno that we're told is necessary for survival. What if survival isn't enough? Dante asked. Then we need poets to imagine something better, even if that imagination gets us killed. Dante returned to writing, energized by Matthias's words. The next section addressed redemption. In my Purgatorio, which the Imperium has largely lost or ignored, I imagined redemption as active process. Souls climbed a mountain, willingly enduring suffering that purged their sins. The key was choice. They chose to change, chose to improve, chose to ascend towards something better. The Imperium has forgotten choice. We are told that suffering is mandatory, that brutal conditions serve the Emperor's will, that to question the system is to embrace heresy. But suffering without the possibility of transcendence isn't purgation. It's simply cruelty. I propose this, that the 9 categories of penal servitude be reformed, not eliminated. The Imperium faces real threats that require real punishment, but transformed from eternal damnation into temporal purgation. Let criminals earn redemption through demonstrated change. Let suffering serve purpose beyond mere torture. Let hell have an exit. He wrote recommendations, specific and practical. Time limits on penal servitude based on behavior rather than arbitrary sentences. Education programs to address the causes of crime rather than simply punishing its symptoms. Psychological evaluation to distinguish between true threats and those broken by the Imperium's grinding brutality. It was radical. It was heretical. It would never be implemented. But it was true. And truth, Dante had learned, mattered more than safety. After 14 hours of continuous writing, Cassius finally called a halt. Enough, Poeta. Your mind needs rest, and the scribes need to begin copying what you've produced. Dante looked at the stack of completed pages, perhaps 50 of them, covered in his increasingly confident Gothic script. 50 pages that would infuriate the powerful, challenge 10,000 years of doctrine, and possibly get everyone involved executed for heresy. Will anyone read this? He asked. I'll read it, Cassius said. The chapter will read it, and once we release it to the broader Imperium, millions will read it. Billions eventually. Your name carries weight, Dante. People will pay attention simply because the actual Dante Alighieri has emerged from history to question everything they believe. And then they'll burn me. Probably, Cassius admitted. But you'll be in good company. The Imperium has burned most of its greatest thinkers at one point or another. We're suspicious of brilliance, uncomfortable with innovation, hostile to change, yet somehow, occasionally, truth survives the flames. Dante thought of Hadrian, dying to protect knowledge, of the Emperor, burning for 10,000 years to protect humanity. Of all the uncounted billions who'd suffered in the hell he'd inadvertently helped create. Then let them burn me, he said quietly. But let the words survive. Let someone, somewhere, read this and understand. Hell is not divine. It's human. And what humans made, humans can unmake. The Crimson Benediction emerged from the warp 3 weeks after Dante completed his testament. The transition was violent, reality reasserting itself with a lurch that sent unsecured objects flying and made mortal crew members vomit into recycling units. Dante, strapped into a crash harness in his assigned quarters, felt the universe settle around him like a bone popping back into its socket. Through his viewport, he saw their destination, a world called Seraphia Prime, hanging in the void like a pearl against black velvet. It was beautiful. Atmospheric shields generating aurora effects, orbital stations glittering like captured stars, void traffic moving in orderly patterns that suggested wealth and civilization. Paradise, Brother Cassius said from the doorway, his massive frame blocking most of the light, or the Imperium's best approximation of it. Seraphia Prime is a cardinal world, seat of the Ecclesiarchy's regional authority, home to 3 billion souls, governed by the Council of Faithful, the most perfect example of imperial order you'll ever witness. "Why are we here?" Dante asked, unstrapping himself from the harness. "Because your testament is spreading faster than we anticipated. We distributed it through astropathic relay to 12 chapter monasteries and 15 administratum archives. From there," Cassius shrugged, "information travels, scribes copy, believers question. Within 3 weeks, your words have reached every major sector in segmentum obscurus. The Ecclesiarchy is displeased." "How displeased?" "They've summoned Chapter Master Dante to answer charges of harboring a heretic. You, specifically. We're here to answer those charges, or more accurately, you're here to defend yourself before the Council of Faithful." Dante's stomach dropped. "A trial?" "Of sorts. Think of it as theological debate with the threat of execution hovering over every argument." Cassius's tone suggested he found this more amusing than concerning. "But first, I want you to see something. Come." They descended to the embarkation deck where Thunderhawks, assault shuttles, Cassius explained, were being prepared for planetfall. But before boarding, the librarian led Dante to an observation gallery overlooking the hangar and, beyond it, Seraphia Prime itself. "Look," Cassius commanded. "Tell me what you see." Dante looked. The planet seemed peaceful from orbit, its cities visible as light clusters against the night side, its day side showing carefully maintained agricultural regions in geometric perfection. "Order," he said. "Structure. Control. Now look closer." Cassius activated a pict feed, zooming the view to street level in one of the major cities. "Tell me what you really see." Dante watched citizens moving through streets that seemed too clean, too perfect. Everyone wore robes color-coded by apparent function, brown for laborers, gray for merchants, white for clergy. They moved in prescribed patterns, never rushing, never deviating from marked paths. At regular intervals, massive statues of the emperor dominated plazas, his golden image radiating benediction or judgment depending on viewing angle. But something was wrong. The citizens' faces, they were blank, not peaceful, blank. Expressions scrubbed of individual character, reduced to masks of dutiful compliance. "They're sedated," Cassius said quietly. "Not chemically, that would be inefficient. Theologically. The Ecclesiarchy has refined propaganda to such perfection that independent thought becomes literally difficult. Daily services, hourly prayer bells, constant voxcaster sermons. From birth to death, the citizens of Seraphia Prime are immersed in doctrine so complete that questioning it requires overcoming neurological conditioning." "This is paradise?" Dante asked, horror creeping into his voice. "This is your paradiso-made policy," Cassius replied. "You wrote about souls ascending toward divine light, achieving perfect communion with God through submission to his will. Seraphia Prime implements that vision, complete submission, perfect order, zero deviation. everyone serving their assigned function in a cosmic hierarchy that never changes. The pict feed shifted, showing the interior of a massive cathedral, the Cathedral of Eternal Ascension, according to the data stream. It was magnificent, easily rivaling St. Peter's Basilica from Dante's Memories of Rome. Stained glass depicted the emperor's glory, golden icons reflected candlelight into dazzling patterns, and the architecture itself seemed designed to make humans feel appropriately small before divine majesty. Thousands of worshippers filled the pews, all in white robes, all swaying in synchronized rhythm as a cardinal led them in prayer. Their voices merged into a single harmonious drone that might have been beautiful if not for its absolute uniformity. No individual voices, no variation in pitch or timing, just collective sound, as if one massive entity prayed rather than thousands of individual souls. Your third book described the celestial rose, Cassius continued, referencing sections of the Paradiso that Dante had almost forgotten. Souls arranged in perfect hierarchy, all gazing upon God's light, all experiencing bliss through submission. The Ecclesiarchy read that and thought, yes, this is what we should create. So they did. Seraphia Prime is your vision implemented, a world where everyone knows their place, accepts their role, and experiences peace through absolute obedience. But they're not people anymore, Dante whispered. They're automatons, servitors without the obvious machinery. Exactly. Cassius deactivated the pict feed. Your comedy gave the Imperium permission to create hell through the Inferno. It also gave them permission to create heaven through the Paradiso. Both visions, when implemented literally rather than metaphorically, produce horror, just different flavors of it. Dante turned away from the viewport, nausea building in his throat. I wrote about divine love, about souls voluntarily ascending toward God because they wanted to, because love drew them upward. I never imagined forced compliance, manufactured peace, engineered contentment. Intent versus implementation, Cassius said. The story of your legacy in the 41st millennium. Now come. The Council of Faithful awaits, and they're very eager to meet the poet whose words they've been implementing for 10,000 years. The descent to Seraphia Prime's surface was turbulent. Atmospheric shields parted reluctantly, as if the planet itself resisted invasion. The Thunderhawk's interior smelled of machine oil and recycled air, and the Blood Angels aboard, an honor guard for Chapter Master Dante, maintained weapons-ready posture despite supposedly entering friendly territory. Expect hostility, Chapter Master Dante briefed his warriors. The Ecclesiarchy doesn't appreciate having their doctrine questioned. They especially don't appreciate it when the questioning comes from the very source they've been citing as authority. Dante Alighieri's presence forces them to either admit they've been misinterpreting his work or double down and declare him heretical, despite his historical credentials. Which will they choose? Matthias asked. Probably both, simultaneously. The Ecclesiarchy specializes in theological contradictions. The chapter master's scarred face showed grim amusement. They'll argue that the historical Dante was divinely inspired, but that the current Dante is either an imposter, corrupted by temporal displacement, or testing the faithful. Any of those justifications allows them to maintain doctrine while burning the poet who contradicts them. So why are we delivering him to them? Another Blood Angel asked. Because running would prove we fear their judgment. And we don't. Chapter Master Dante's voice hardened. We're the Blood Angels. We kneel to the Emperor alone. If the Ecclesiarchy wants to try burning one of Terra's greatest poets because he tells uncomfortable truths, they're welcome to attempt it. They'll just have to get through us first. The Thunderhawk touched down in a landing zone surrounded by ecclesiastical guards, soldiers in ornate armor decorated with scripture and purity seals, carrying weapons that were equal parts functional and ceremonial. They formed two lines leading from the shuttle to the Cathedral of Eternal Ascension, creating a corridor of armed judgment. Dante descended the ramp with Cassius beside him and Chapter Master Dante behind him. The other blood angels formed a protective formation, chains wards and bolters visible but not quite aimed at the ecclesiastical guards. The tension was thick enough to choke on. At the end of the corridor stood a figure in robes so white they seemed to glow. Cardinal Severus, according to the data slate Cassius had provided. He was ancient, his face a landscape of wrinkles, his hands skeletal and trembling, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent, and utterly merciless. Dante Alighieri, Cardinal Severus said, his voice amplified by voxcasters to echo across the landing zone. Poet of Florence, author of the Divine Comedy, welcome to Seraphia Prime. We have much to discuss. I'm sure we do, Dante replied, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. Walk with me, the Cardinal commanded. The council awaits, and they have questions about your testament. He said the word like it tasted of poison. Questions about why you've chosen to attack the very systems your original work inspired. Questions about whether you're truly Dante Alighieri or merely a demon wearing his face. Dante took a breath, thought of Hadrian dying to protect knowledge, and stepped forward into the cathedral's shadow. Paradise, he was learning, could be more frightening than any hell. The Cathedral of Eternal Ascension's interior was designed to overwhelm. Columns rose into darkness far above, their surfaces carved with scenes of Imperial triumph and Zeno's defeat. The floor was polished marble, inlaid with gold that formed patterns. Devotional text, Dante realized. Prayers written in high Gothic so large that only from a great height could they be read completely. The faithful walked on prayers without knowing it, their daily movements inadvertently worshipping the emperor with every step. Cardinal Severus led them through the nave, where thousands of worshippers knelt in synchronized prayer, their voices creating that same disturbing harmony Dante had witnessed through the Pict feed. None looked up as the procession passed. Their attention remained fixed on the massive golden aquila at the cathedral's far end, the double-headed eagle radiating judgment across the assembled faithful. They ascended stairs, 17 levels, Dante counted, each representing some theological significance he didn't understand, until they reached a chamber that might have been a courtroom or a throne room, or both. 17 chairs arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by a figure in cardinal's robes, each face bearing the particular expression of someone accustomed to absolute authority. The Council of Faithful. Dante Alighieri, Cardinal Severus said, taking his place in the central chair. Stand before the council and account for yourself. Dante stepped forward. The blood angels moved to follow, but Severus raised a skeletal hand. The Space Marines may observe, but this is ecclesiastical matter. They have no authority here. The poet is under blood angels' protection, Chapter Master Dante said, his voice carrying the absolute certainty of someone who'd commanded for 1,500 years. Where he goes, we go. Then stand in the gallery. Severus gestured to an elevated platform along the chamber's wall. But do not interfere. This is theological debate, not battlefield. The blood angels reluctantly took position in the gallery, leaving Dante standing alone before the 17 cardinals. He felt suddenly small, not physically, though the cardinals' elevated chairs made them literally look down on him, but existentially. Who was he to challenge the theological apparatus of an empire spanning 1,000,000 worlds? Then he remembered. He was Dante Alighieri. He had written the comedy, and whether that was credential or curse, it was all he had. You wrote the Divine Comedy, Cardinal Severus began, his voice taking on the cadence of formal interrogation. A 3-part epic documenting the afterlife, Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso. You claimed divine inspiration for this work, yes? I claimed poetic inspiration, Dante corrected. I never said God dictated it to me. I was trying to understand divine justice through the limited lens of mortal comprehension. Yet you wrote with such authority, such certainty. Another cardinal spoke, this one younger, face marked with augmetic implants that gave her eyes an unsettling glow. You described hell's structure in precise detail. You categorized sins with mathematical exactness. You presented your vision as truth, not speculation. I was wrong, Dante said simply. Silence in the chamber. The cardinals exchanged glances that spoke of calculations and strategic considerations. Explain, Severus commanded. I was a mortal man trying to make sense of concepts beyond mortal understanding. I needed hell to be organized because chaos terrified me. I needed punishment to match crime because random suffering was unbearable to contemplate. I created structure not because it was true, but because it was necessary for my sanity. Dante's voice grew stronger as he spoke. I wrote metaphor, you implemented it as policy, and in doing so, you created real suffering in service to my fictional vision. The penal system is not fictional, another cardinal interjected, an older man with burn scars across half his face. It is imperial law, sanctioned by 10,000 years of precedent, justified by necessity. The Imperium faces threats that require harsh punishment. Your Inferno provided the framework for that harshness. My Inferno was written for medieval Florence, where the greatest threat was political faction fighting and the occasional plague, not galaxy-spanning war against literal demons. Dante felt heat rising in his chest. Not anger exactly, but passionate certainty. I wrote for a world where one man's sin affected his soul. You've created systems where one man's sin justifies torturing millions. Heresy, a cardinal whispered. Truth, Dante countered. I've seen your penal worlds through pict feeds and reports. I've read the classifications, studied the conditions. You've taken my 9 circles and made them real. Frozen worlds for traitors, mining hells for cowards, penal legions for minor infractions. You've built hell and claimed I gave you permission. You did give us permission. Cardinal Severus's voice rose, losing its formal control. Your comedy provided moral framework, theological justification, structural blueprint. For 10,000 years, the faithful have read your work as divinely inspired guide to righteous punishment. You gave the Imperium the language to discuss damnation systematically, and now you appear, impossibly preserved from the ancient past, to tell us we misunderstood, that we implemented your vision incorrectly? Yes, Dante said. Exactly that. Exactly. Another cardinal stood, younger than most, face unlined but eyes carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much. Then explain Paradiso. Explain why you wrote about perfect order, about souls arranged in celestial hierarchy, about peace achieved through absolute submission to divine will. We implemented that vision too. Seraphia Prime is your paradise made real, everyone knowing their place, everyone content in service, everyone ascending toward the Emperor's light through ordained structure. And in doing so, you've turned people into automatons, Dante replied. I wrote about souls choosing to ascend, voluntarily surrendering to divine love because they were drawn to it. You've created a world where people have no choice but to submit, where independent thought is conditioned out of them, where peace comes not from genuine faith, but from neurological manipulation. You dare, the young cardinal began. I dare because I must. Dante's voice rang through the chamber. Because every day I remain silent, more souls suffer in systems built on my words. Because the Imperium has taken poetry and made it prison, has turned metaphor into methodology, has implemented my fictional vision as imperial truth. And the results are monstrous. Cardinal Severus leaned forward, his ancient face calculating. You've written something. A testament, they call it. Distributed through astropathic relay, spread across sectors like a virus. In it, You recant your original vision, propose reforms to established imperial law, question the theological foundations we've spent millennia constructing. Do you understand what you've done? I've told the truth. You've created chaos. Severus's voice dropped to dangerous quiet. The penal system is not merely punishment. It is deterrent. It is control. It is the mechanism by which the Imperium maintains order across 1,000,000 worlds with finite resources and infinite threats. Your testament undermines that control. It gives criminals hope where despair kept them contained. It suggests redemption where we need only compliance. It introduces mercy where harshness is survival necessity. Then perhaps your survival necessity is indistinguishable from damnation, Dante said. Heresy, multiple cardinals whispered now, the word spreading through the council like contagion. Is it heresy to tell the truth? Dante looked at each cardinal in turn. I have witnessed the warp. I have seen actual demons, actual hell, and I can tell you, the systems you've built in my name are worse than what the ruinous powers could imagine. At least the warp is honest about its cruelty. The Imperium calls its torture righteousness and claims the Emperor sanctions it. The Emperor protects, a cardinal began. The Emperor burns, Dante interrupted. I've seen his light in the warp. He's dying, has been dying for 10,000 years, sustained only by daily sacrifice of psychers. He's too busy suffering to sanction anything. The hell you've created is yours alone. You cannot hide behind divine mandate when God is too occupied dying to issue mandates. The chamber erupted. Cardinals shouting over each other, some demanding immediate execution, others calling for extended interrogation, still others suggesting this was a test of faith, and they were failing it. Cardinal Severus raised his hand, and silence fell gradually, reluctantly. Dante Alighieri, he said, his voice carrying the weight of judgment about to be rendered. The council finds your testimony troubling. Your presence forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the foundations of our doctrine. You are either the genuine poet from ancient terror, in which case you undermine 10,000 years of interpretation, or you are an impostor or demon, in which case you must be destroyed. Either way, you represent threat to imperial stability. So you'll kill me, Dante said. It wasn't a question. We'll deliberate, Severus corrected. You'll be held in the cathedral's guest quarters, luxurious accommodations, not a cell. The blood angels may maintain their protective watch, and tomorrow we will render judgment on whether Dante Alighieri's truth is more dangerous to the Imperium than Dante Alighieri's lies. Guards appeared, the ecclesiastical soldiers from the landing zone, moving with professional precision to surround Dante. The blood angels tensed in the gallery, hands moving toward weapons. Stand down, Chapter Master Dante commanded his warriors. We agreed to this trial. We'll abide by its process. For now. As Dante was led from the judgment chamber, he looked back at the 17 cardinals. They were arguing among themselves now. Formal decorum dissolved into something approaching actual debate. Good. Let them argue. Let them question. Let the foundations shake. He had written hell. Now he would watch while they decided whether truth or poetry deserved to burn. The guest quarters were indeed luxurious. A suite of rooms decorated with religious iconography so dense it approached parody. Every surface bore devotional text. Every corner housed a golden cherub, and the bed itself was carved with scenes from the emperor's supposed life, rendered in excruciating detail. Dante suspected the room was designed to either inspire deep faith or provoke madness, depending on the occupant's psychological fortitude. Brother Cassius stood by the reinforced window, gazing down at Seraphia Prime's capital city sprawling below. They're terrified, the librarian said without preamble. Not of you specifically, of what you represent. A poet from the past? Dante joined him at the window. An inconvenient truth. Cassius gestured to the city below, where evening prayer bells were ringing and citizens were flowing into streets in orderly procession toward their designated worship sites. The Imperium functions on certainty. We tell people, this is how reality works, this is what the Emperor demands, this is the proper structure of punishment and reward. Certainty allows control. Control enables survival, and survival is all we have. But I'm uncertainty incarnate, Dante realized. Exactly. You're the author whose work they've cited for 10 millennia, suddenly appearing to tell them they misunderstood everything. You can't be ignored. Your name carries too much weight. You can't be easily dismissed as heretic. Your historical credentials are too strong, so they have to either acknowledge you're right, which destabilizes their entire theological framework, or prove you're wrong, which requires attacking the very authority they've been invoking. Dante watched the citizens below, moving in their choreographed devotion. What will they decide? I don't know, but I know what happens either way will be catastrophic. Cassius turned from the window, his massive armored form somehow managing to look weary. If they declare you heretical and execute you, they fracture the Imperial Church. Too many believers will question how the actual Dante Alighieri could be heretical when his work has been foundational for so long. Schisms will form. Violence will follow. And if they acknowledge I'm right, then they admit 10,000 years of imperial law has been built on misinterpretation. The penal system loses theological justification. Worlds like Seraphia Prime lose their claim to paradise. Everything becomes negotiable. Cassius paused. The Imperium can't afford negotiable. We're held together by rigid certainty. Introduce flexibility and we might bend, or we might shatter. So I've doomed the Imperium by telling the truth? Perhaps. Or perhaps the Imperium was already doomed, and you've simply accelerated the inevitable. The librarian's tone carried something that might have been approval. Rigid things break eventually, Poeta. Better to break on our own terms than wait for enemies to break us. The door burst open, not violently, but urgently. Brother Matthias entered, his armor bearing fresh scoring that suggested recent combat. We have a situation, he said without preamble. Chaos Raiders. Same warband that attacked the unending ledger. They've translated into system and they're burning straight for Seraphia Prime. Dante's stomach dropped. Because of me? Probably. Matthias's Vox Grill made the admission sound almost casual. You refused Slanesh's offer aboard the Crimson Benediction. The Emperor's children don't handle rejection well. They've decided if they can't corrupt you, they'll destroy you, and anyone near you in the process. How long until they arrive? Cassius asked. 4 hours, maybe 5. Matthias turned to Dante. The Cardinal Council is evacuating to orbital defenses. They've invited you to join them, supposedly for your protection, actually so they can continue deliberating your fate while the planet burns below. What about the citizens? Dante moved to the window, looking down at the oblivious crowds still proceeding to evening prayers. 3 billion people. Do they know? They're being notified through official channels. Stay calm. Proceed to designated shelters. Trust in the Emperor's protection. Matthias's tone made his opinion of those instructions clear. But the shelters won't matter. If the Emperor's children land in force, this world becomes a canvas for their art, and their art involves a lot of screaming. Dante thought of the Chaos Marine aboard the unending ledger, the cultured voice discussing contrapasso while preparing to torture. The artistic precision applied to suffering. 3 billion souls transformed into raw material for Slanesh's servants to work with. I can't evacuate, he said. If they're coming for me, leaving means letting them ravage this world unopposed while they search. Staying means you become bait, Chapter Master Dante said, entering the quarters with 4 more blood angels. Which is strategically useful. We can set a trap, use you to draw the Emperor's children into engagement zones where we have advantage. You're proposing to sacrifice me. I'm proposing to use you." The chapter master's scarred face showed no apology. "You wanted to atone for what your words became. Here's your chance. Stand in the open. Let the Chaos Marines come for you, and trust that we're good enough to kill them before they kill you. And if you're not, then you die knowing you drew the enemy's attention away from 3 billion civilians. It's more than most mortals achieve." Master Dante moved to the tactical display built into the room's wall. Apparently, even guest quarters doubled as command centers on Seraphia Prime. "The alternative is evacuating you, which means the Emperor's children tear this world apart searching. Either way, blood gets spilled. At least this way, we control whose blood and where." Dante looked at the 3 Space Marines, Cassius, Matthias, and their chapter master. Warriors who'd spent centuries fighting humanity's wars, who'd seen more horror than Dante could imagine, who treated strategic sacrifice as simple battlefield mathematics. "In my purgatorio," Dante said quietly, "souls climbed the mountain through willing suffering. They chose their penance, accepted their pain, used it as purification." He took a breath. "I'll be your bait, but I want a weapon. If I'm going to face demons wearing the faces of artists, I want to be able to fight back." Matthias actually laughed, a harsh bark of sound through his Vox grill. "A poet wants to fight Emperor's children. With what? Scathing verses. With whatever you'll give me." Dante met the Space Marine's eye lenses. "I've spent weeks watching you prepare for violence I can't participate in, witnessing wars I can't affect, standing aside while better men die protecting me. If this is my penance, being bait, then let me face it armed." The 3 Space Marines exchanged glances. Then Chapter Master Dante nodded slowly. "Give him a bolt pistol, scaled for mortal hands. Teach him to point it in approximately the right direction. It won't save him, but it might make him feel better about dying." "It's not about the dying," Dante said. "It's about the choosing. In my comedy, damnation came from refusing to choose rightly. Salvation came from active participation in redemption. I'm choosing to participate, even if participation means becoming target practice for Chaos Marines." Cassius pulled a bolt pistol from his equipment harness, smaller than the massive weapons Space Marines carried, but still heavy and brutal in design. "This is a Godwin pattern bolt pistol, mortal scale. It fires self-propelled explosive rounds. Point the barrel at what you want to destroy, pull the trigger, accept the recoil. Each shot kicks like a mule and could punch through ceramite at close range, which means it will definitely kill you if you're careless with it." He handed the weapon to Dante, who took it with hands that only trembled slightly. The pistol was heavier than it looked, its weight carrying the density of serious purpose. This wasn't a ceremonial weapon or decorative piece. This was a tool built for one function: delivering death efficiently. "Thank you," Dante said. "Don't thank me yet," Cassius replied. "Carrying a weapon means the enemy will treat you as combatant rather than non-combatant. It means they'll kill you without hesitation or mercy. It means your death will be violent, painful, and swift." "Good," Dante said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "I wrote about violence for years, documented it, categorized it, turned it into poetry. Time I experienced it directly. Time I understood what words like contrapasso actually mean when applied to flesh rather than metaphor." Chapter Master Dante studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "So be it. Brother Cassius, take him to the cathedral's central plaza. Make him visible, make him vulnerable, make him irresistible target for the Chaos Warband." "And the council?" Matthias asked. They wanted him for continued deliberation. "The council can deliberate in orbit while we fight on the ground. Tell Cardinal Severus that Dante Alighieri has chosen to defend Seraphia Prime rather than evacuate. See if that shames them into doing the same." As they prepared to move, Dante looked once more at the city below. Citizens still flowing to evening prayers, unaware that in hours their paradise would become battleground. 3 billion souls whose peace depended on rigid structure, on certainty, on the very systems Dante had spent weeks trying to dismantle. "If we survive this," he said to Cassius, "remind me to write about the hypocrisy of criticizing imperial brutality while depending on imperial warriors to protect me from consequences." "If we survive this," Cassius replied, "I'll remind you of much worse hypocrisies. But first, let's focus on the surviving part. That's traditionally the difficult section." They descended from the guest quarters into the cathedral's central plaza, where the emperor's massive golden statue dominated the space, and where, in approximately 4 hours, the emperor's fallen children would come hunting for a poet who'd refused their corruption. Dante gripped the bolt pistol and waited for his final canto to begin. The cathedral plaza filled with an eerie calm as Seraphia Prime's citizens received evacuation orders. They moved with the same orderly precision they brought to everything. No panic, no chaos, just structured exodus toward underground shelters. Dante watched from the plaza's center, standing beneath the emperor's golden statue like an offering left for ancient gods. The blood angels had positioned themselves strategically, Matthias on the cathedral's roof with a sniper rifle, other brothers concealed in archways and behind buttresses, Chapter Master Dante coordinating from a tactical command post established in the cathedral's crypt. Only Cassius remained visible, standing beside Dante like a crimson guardian angel, his force staff crackling with barely contained psychic energy. "They're coming," Cassius said, his psychic senses detecting what normal humans couldn't yet perceive. "I feel them in the warp, twisted souls burning with artistic hunger. They're not approaching as military force. They're approaching as connoisseurs. They want to savor this." Dante's grip tightened on the bolt pistol. 4 hours had passed with agonizing slowness, each minute stretching like days. Now, finally, the waiting ended. The sky tore open. Not metaphorically. The actual sky ripped like canvas, reality's fabric shredding to allow something impossible through. A chaos vessel, smaller than the one that had attacked the unending ledger, but more obscene, descended through the wound in space. Its hull writhed with colors that shouldn't exist, decorated with sculptures that might have been art or might have been fused bodies screaming in permanent ecstasy agony. Drop pods launched from the vessel, burning through atmosphere like falling stars. They struck the plaza in a pattern that was almost beautiful. Geometric precision applied to invasion, each pod equidistant from the next, creating a circle with Dante at its center. The pods opened like flowers blooming, petals of corrupted ceramite peeling back to reveal the Emperor's children within. 12 of them, each one a masterwork of corruption, their armor transformed into artistic statements. One bore armor that seemed to be living skin, stretched and tattooed with scenes of suffering. Another's ceramite had been replaced with precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, worked into patterns that hypnotized and nauseated simultaneously. A third wore armor covered in musical instruments, flutes made from bone, drums of stretched flesh, strings that hummed with sounds beyond human hearing, and leading them, stepping from the central pod with the grace of a dancer and the menace of a predator, was the warband's leader. His armor was the color of corrupted amethyst, chased with gold serpents, and his helmet bore Dante's own face, rendered in perfect detail, a mask made from the poet's features, captured somehow despite the distance and lack of sitting. "Dante Alighieri," the Chaos Marine said, his voice processed through the face mask to sound like Dante's own voice, corrupted and amplified. "The poet who refused paradise, the artist who rejected perfection. We've come to show you what your refusal cost." "I know what it cost," Dante replied, raising his bolt pistol with hands that shook but didn't waver. "Everything, and I'd refuse again." The Chaos Marine tilted his head. Dante's head twisted into mockery. Such conviction, such certainty. You wrote about hell with that same certainty, didn't you? Categorized damnation, structured suffering, made torture comprehensible. We appreciated your work, Poeta. We simply took it further than you imagined. You took it wrong, Dante said, like everyone else in this damned future. You read metaphor as manual, poetry as permission. My Inferno was warning, not celebration. And yet you made it beautiful. The Chaos Marine gestured, and his warband spread out, encircling the plaza with predatory patience. Every punishment you described, the contrapasso, the perfect matching of sin to suffering, it was art. Dark art, certainly. Horrifying art, but art nonetheless. You're an artist, Dante. Like us, you just lack the courage to admit what art truly requires. Art requires suffering, Dante asked, buying time, watching the blood angels shift positions in his peripheral vision. Art requires truth, and truth is pain. The Chaos Marine began walking closer, each step precise, almost dance-like. You wrote about souls transformed by their sins. We simply make that transformation literal. You imagined punishments fitting crimes. We implement those punishments as creative expression. You documented hell. We perfected it. You perverted it. Semantics. Close now, within 10 paces. Dante could see details through the eye lenses of that horrible mask. His own eyes reflected back at him, but wrong, corrupted. But let's not argue philosophy. Let's create, together, you and I, poet and perfectionist, making art from your willing sacrifice. I'll be gentle. At first, we'll start with your hands, those hands that wrote the comedy. Transform them into something beautiful and terrible. Then your voice, the voice that refused Slanesh. We'll make it sing hymns to she who thirsts until... Brother Cassius's force staff detonated with psychic fury, a column of golden lightning that struck the Chaos Marine directly. The corrupted Space Marine staggered, his armor smoking, but didn't fall. Instead, he laughed. There it is. The violence, the passion. He turned to face Cassius, the librarian who thinks psychic gifts are disciplined tools rather than artistic expression. We'll teach you differently, blood drinker. We'll show you what the warp really wants from you. Then everything happened at once. The Emperor's children attacked with coordinated precision, each moving toward a different blood angel position. Bolt rounds screamed through the plaza, explosive projectiles detonating against ceramite and stone. Matthias fired from the cathedral roof, his sniper rounds punching through corrupted armor. But the Chaos Marines seemed to welcome the pain, fighting harder as they bled. Cassius engaged their leader in melee, force staff against demon-forged blade, psychic fury against corrupted enhancement. The librarian was fast, but his opponent was faster, moving with speed that defied his massive armor. And Dante, standing in the plaza's center, raised his bolt pistol and fired. The recoil nearly broke his wrist. The explosive round went wide, detonating against the plaza's marble floor, sending shrapnel flying. Dante steadied himself, aimed more carefully, fired again. This time he hit, caught an Emperor's Children Marine in the leg joint. The explosive round detonated, blowing the joint apart, and the Chaos Marine stumbled. Only stumbled, not fell, because even crippled these creatures were impossibly dangerous. But it was enough. Brother Matthias's sniper round took the stumbling Marine in the helmet, punching through eye lens and out the back of his skull. 1 down, 11 remaining. Dante kept firing. Each shot felt like betrayal of everything he'd been, a poet, a diplomat, a man of words rather than violence. But Hadrian had died with violence. The Emperor burned with violence. The entire Imperium existed in violence's shadow. And if Dante was going to challenge that system, he first had to survive it. A Chaos Marine broke from the melee, charging directly at Dante with a blade that sang with impossible tones. The poet fired, missed, fired again, hit the Marine's chest plate but failed to penetrate. The corrupted warrior kept coming, blade raised, seconds from. Chapter Master Dante materialized from somewhere, his ancient power sword carving through the charging Marine's torso, bisecting him mid-stride. The two halves fell separately, still twitching, still trying to complete their attack, even in pieces. "Keep shooting!" the chapter master commanded. "You're doing better than expected." Dante kept shooting. His bolt pistol's ammunition indicator showed 6 rounds remaining. He'd started with 15. 9 shots, 2 hits, 1 kill assist. Pathetic by Space Marine standards. But for a poet who'd never held a weapon before 3 days ago, not terrible. The battle raged around him. Space Marines engaging Chaos Marines in close combat that churned the marble plaza into cratered ruin. Blood splattered, both red and something else, something that smoked and hissed when it touched stone. Armor shattered, weapons shrieked, and through it all, that horrible artistic precision, as if the Emperor's children were choreographing their violence, turning murder into performance. Then the Chaos Warband leader broke from his duel with Cassius, moving with impossible speed toward Dante. The librarian tried to intercept, but another Emperor's Children Marine blocked him, forcing engagement. "No more running, Poeta," the corrupted Marine said, his voice, Dante's voice, carrying mocking affection. "No more intermediaries, just you and me, artist to artist, discussing your work directly." He raised his blade, and Dante raised his bolt pistol. 3 rounds left, point-blank range. This was it, the moment where poetry met violence, where metaphor became murder, where Dante Alighieri's comedy reached its final, literal canto. Dante fired. The bolt round struck the Chaos Marine's chest plate, detonated, cracked ceramite but didn't penetrate. The warrior stumbled but kept coming. Dante fired again. This round caught the mask, the horrible mask bearing Dante's own face. It shattered, revealing the corrupted features beneath. Not human anymore, not even Space Marine. Something else, transformed by Slanesh's touch into beauty that was indistinguishable from horror. 1 round left. The Chaos Marine's blade descended. Dante fired his final shot not at the Marine's armor, but at his own feet, at the marble floor where his blood had already dripped from a cut sustained in the fighting. The explosive round detonated, marble shards exploding upward into the Chaos Marine's exposed face, driving stone fragments into corrupted flesh. The warrior screamed, not in pain, but in ecstasy, as if being blinded was artistic revelation. He staggered, blade swinging wild, and Brother Matthias's sniper round finally found its mark, punching through the warrior's neck seal, severing the connection between helmet and armor. The leader of the Emperor's children fell, ceramite crashing against marble, blood pooling in patterns that were almost beautiful. The remaining Chaos Marines fought on for minutes more, but their coordination had shattered with their leader's fall. The Blood Angels systematically destroyed them, each kill purchased with effort but inevitable once tactical advantage was established. Finally, silence. Except for the crackling of fires, the groaning of damaged architecture, and Dante's own ragged breathing. "You survived," Cassius said, approaching with his armor scorched and cracked but intact. "That's unexpected. Most mortals don't survive direct engagement with Emperor's children." "I got lucky," Dante managed, staring at his empty bolt pistol. "You got smart," Chapter Master Dante corrected, examining the shattered marble where Dante's final shot had detonated. "Using environment as weapon. That's how mortals survive when strength fails. Perhaps there's hope for poets in combat after all." Dante looked around the ruined plaza. The Emperor's statue still stood, golden and untouched, despite the carnage surrounding it. 12 Chaos Marines dead, 3 Blood Angels wounded, 0 civilian casualties because the evacuation had completed before the fighting began. "What now?" Dante asked. "Now?" Chapter Master Dante's scarred face showed something that might have been approval. Now, we return to the council and finish your trial. You've proven you're willing to defend Imperial citizens despite criticizing Imperial systems. That gives you moral authority. And moral authority, Poeta, is the only currency that matters in theological debate. As they prepared to depart the ruined plaza, Dante looked once more at the fallen emperor's children. Warriors who'd read his comedy and found in it permission to create new suffering. Artists who'd perverted his metaphor into methodology. In his Inferno, he'd placed the violent in the seventh circle, eternally punished for their destructive nature. But these warriors welcomed violence, craved it, turned it into creative expression. How did you punish those who experienced punishment as pleasure? Perhaps that was the point. Perhaps hell wasn't about punishment at all. Perhaps it was about choice, choosing violence over peace, choosing corruption over resistance, choosing art that celebrated suffering over art that questioned it. Dante had chosen, had stood in the plaza, had fired his bolt pistol, had refused to become victim or material for others' twisted creativity, had chosen participation over passivity, and somehow, impossibly, he'd survived to write about it. The Council of Faithful reconvened 3 days after the battle, and Dante stood before them again, but different now. His hands bore burn scars from the bolt pistol's recoil. His robes were stained with blood, both his own and others. He carried the weight of having killed, of having participated in the Imperium's endless violence, even while criticizing it. Cardinal Severus looked older, the trauma of watching his paradise world nearly fall having aged him visibly. The other cardinals seemed similarly shaken, their theological certainty cracked by proximity to actual demons rather than doctrinal discussions of them. Dante Alighieri, Severus began, his voice lacking its previous authority. You defended Seraphia Prime when you could have evacuated. You stood as bait for Chaos Marines seeking your corruption. You fought, despite being untrained for combat, despite knowing you would likely die. Why? Because words aren't enough, Dante replied. I spent weeks criticizing the Imperium's brutality while depending on Imperial warriors to protect me. That made me hypocrite. If I'm going to challenge the systems built on my words, I needed to understand what those systems defend against. I needed to experience violence, not just document it. And now that you've experienced it, another cardinal asked, do you still believe the penal system should be reformed? That your 9 circles were metaphor rather than mandate? More than ever, Dante's voice was steady. Because I've seen what we're fighting. The Emperor's children aren't evil because they break rules. They're evil because they've perfected suffering into art form, because they've made torture their creative expression. Fighting them requires violence, yes, but it doesn't require abandoning mercy. It doesn't require building our own hell as countermeasure. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The Imperium tells itself that brutal measures are necessary for survival. Perhaps they are. But necessity isn't the same as virtue. We can survive without claiming our cruelty is divine mandate. We can implement harsh punishment without citing my comedy as theological justification. We can be honest about what we are, desperate species fighting for continued existence, without pretending we're implementing God's plan. Silence in the chamber. Then Cardinal Severus stood, his skeletal frame seeming to carry the weight of 10,000 years. The council has deliberated, he said. We cannot deny you are Dante Alighieri. The evidence is overwhelming, and your actions defending Seraphia Prime prove you serve humanity rather than chaos. We also cannot ignore your testament, which raises questions about foundations of imperial law. He paused, and Dante felt his heart hammering. Therefore, we render this judgment. Dante Alighieri is recognized as historical figure of immense theological significance. His original comedy remains valid as inspirational text. His testament is acknowledged as legitimate theological challenge requiring serious consideration. The penal system will not be immediately reformed. Such changes take centuries to implement safely, but a commission will be established to study his proposals. That's not reform, Dante said. That's bureaucracy. Yes, Severus admitted, but in the Imperium, bureaucracy is how change happens without causing civil war. You wanted to challenge the system. Congratulations, you've started a process that will take decades to resolve, affect billions of lives, and possibly reshape how the Imperium implements justice. That's more impact than most mortals achieve in a lifetime. It wasn't victory. It wasn't even close to what Dante had hoped for. But it was something, a crack in the certainty, a question inserted into doctrine, a possibility that perhaps eventually the hell built on his words might be dismantled and rebuilt into something less terrible. I accept the council's judgment, Dante said formally. Good, because you don't have much choice. Severus's thin smile held grim humor. You'll remain with the Blood Angels for your protection. Your testament will continue to spread, and you'll likely spend the rest of your life arguing theology with cardinals, explaining your intent to scholars, and defending your position against those who benefit from current systems. Is that the paradise you imagined when you wrote your comedy? No, Dante admitted, but I wrote paradise wrong too. I imagined souls achieving perfect bliss through passive contemplation of divine light. I was wrong. Real paradise, if it exists at all, must be fought for, constantly, with words and weapons both. Never finished, never perfected, always contested. Chapter Master Dante approached, his ancient face showing something that might have been respect. The poeta has learned. Perhaps there's hope for the 41st millennium after all. Perhaps, Dante said. Though I suspect hope is another thing I got wrong in my comedy. Dante lived another 37 years in the 41st millennium, an extraordinary lifespan by Imperial standards, achieved through medical care the Blood Angels provided and sheer stubborn refusal to die before finishing his work. He wrote 3 more books during those decades, each challenging some aspect of Imperial doctrine, each generating theological controversy that rippled across sectors. He never saw Earth. The Blood Angels promised to take him to Terra to show him what Florence had become, but the journey never happened. The galaxy was too vast, the threats too constant, the opportunities to travel home never aligning with safety and necessity. He never saw Beatrice again. Not in dreams, not in visions, not in the warp's temptations. She remained in the past, unreachable across 11,000 years, transformed from actual person into symbol he'd created in his comedy. But he saw the Imperium begin to shift, slowly, incrementally, commissioners studying penal reform, scholars questioning rigid interpretations of his work, cardinals arguing about whether current systems truly served the emperor's will or merely perpetuated comfortable cruelty. It wasn't redemption, it wasn't salvation, it wasn't the divine justice he'd once imagined possible, but it was change. And in the 41st millennium, where humanity had been grinding through the same horrors for 10,000 years, change itself was revolutionary. When Dante finally died, peacefully, in sleep, aboard the Crimson Benediction while traveling between war zones, his last words were recorded by Brother Cassius, who'd remained his closest friend and fiercest theological opponent until the end. I wrote about hell because I feared chaos. I wrote about purgatory because I needed hope. I wrote about paradise because I couldn't bear believing this life was all we had. I was wrong about the specifics, but perhaps I was right about the principle, that souls can choose, that choices matter, that even in the darkest millennium imaginable, human agency persists. That's not the divine comedy I imagined, but it's the human one we live. And perhaps that's enough. They buried him on Baal, the Blood Angels' fortress monastery world, in a tomb bearing both his names, Dante Alighieri and Luis Dante, the poet and the chapter master, two Dante who'd shaped different eras through different means. His testament survived, spread, evolved into new theologies, new challenges, new questions that the Imperium would spend centuries attempting to answer. He had documented hell and found it was real. He had imagined paradise and found it was impossible. But he had also discovered something his medieval mind had never conceived, that in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, the simple act of questioning, of choosing to challenge rather than accept, was itself a form of salvation. Not divine salvation, human salvation, the only kind that ever really mattered. The Emperor's light might burn eternal, but Dante Alighieri had learned that human voices questioning in the darkness were equally necessary. Perhaps more so, because gods, even dying ones, couldn't reform themselves. Only humans could do that. One choice, one challenge, one testament at a time. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only war. But there are also poets. And poets, Dante had learned, were humanity's way of fighting wars that couldn't be won with bolters and chains words, wars against hopelessness, against certainty, against the idea that suffering was inevitable rather than chosen. He had entered hell. He had witnessed it, fought it, and ultimately challenged it. Not with divine power or transhuman strength, but with words and the stubborn insistence that even in the darkest age imaginable, truth still mattered. That was his final comedy. And unlike the first, this one was true. The Emperor protects. More stories await.